Check 1 2 test test. Check 1 2. Why would that have gone away? Do you know?
Shouldn't go. We can see it right now. Quick.
Well, it's always been there before. I'm not sure why it was just gone.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Rekha Muttaraj coming to you live from our newsroom right now with some breaking news about an explosion that has happened in Crosby. This happened at a plant off of Highway 90 near Krennic Road. And we are just getting initial information into our newsroom right now about this. And you're looking, if you're watching this Facebook Live, you can see the video in the big box on your screen. It's that black smoke that is billowing up into the air right now. This explosion happening just minutes ago. People from miles away saying they felt the explosion. They felt their house shake. So we are getting a lot of comments on our Facebook Live page, and we want to bring you the very latest. So that's why we want to bring this information to you. Thank you so much. From the Crosby Volunteer Fire Department right now, they're saying that there has been an incident at the Chemco plant on Ramsey Road. Crosby Fire and surrounding agencies are responding at this time. If you have children in the area, children who go to Crosby ISD schools, they have said that all campuses are now sheltering in place. All Crosby schools are sheltering in place. All of their AC units, their HVAC units have been shut down at all CISD buildings. We're assuming to keep some of that smoke out of coming into the buildings. Right now, Crosby schools are not releasing students to parents or by bus until it is safe to do so. So Crosby students are sheltering in place right now. This comes just minutes after an explosion rocked that area, again, in Crosby, and firefighters are on the scene. It was an incident at the Chemco plant. That's KMCO. I hope I'm saying that right. They're saying that's on Ramsey Road, but obviously it's a very big area that they're covering right now, and Air 11 is live over the scene. We're trying to get you the best shots. You can see firefighters have showed up. Emergency vehicles are there as well. Crosby ISD schools, again, sheltering in place. If you are a parent, please don't head out to the scene. Please wait for the school to contact you. The way we've been getting updates is on our Twitter feed. They've been keeping parents posted that way, so I hope you can log on there and take a look at that. In the meantime, so many of you are sending or commenting on our Facebook post. I'm going to step over here and take a look and see what I can read right now. Someone is saying that this is the second plant explosion in 2 months. A lot of people saying that they felt their house shake. Apparently, this explosion was felt miles away. And again, if you're just joining us right now, I'm Reka Mutteraj in the newsroom, and we are doing this Facebook Live because of this breaking news that has just developed. An explosion at the Chemco plant reported off of Highway 90 near Krennic Road. Again, this is in Crosby. You're watching a live look right now. You see the flames right there inside the plant. It looks like there's water that is getting to those flames right now. So firefighters are on the scene. That black smoke is very thick, billowing into the air. Not something we've wanted to see just days after the ITC chemical fire, but of course we are also want to mention, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, there are other ways to see this as well. We're on YouTube and Periscope. We want to get this information to you as soon as possible. Of course, we have updates constantly on khou.com, and we're updating our Twitter feed as well. So a lot of different ways for you to be in touch with us, but keep the Facebook Live comments coming as well, because we are bringing you this breaking news right now. So many people are saying that they felt this explosion. Unclear about the injuries so far, but again, we are waiting to hear more. And it looks like Sheriff Ed Gonzalez with Harris County has said that they're shutting down the roadways near the chemical plant, which is in East Harris County off of Old Highway 90. And preliminary info so far is that 2 employees are possibly injured. All right, so that's the first information we're getting about this as far as the number of people who may have been injured during this explosion. Harris County Sheriff saying that 2 employees at that plant are possibly injured. We don't know the extent of their injuries. We don't know anyone else who may have been injured. Of course, they're assessing that situation right now, but really the main concern is getting those flames out. And that smoke keeps coming up. We know that firefighters are on scene. Crosby Volunteer Fire Department is there, and I'm guessing that more agencies will be joining them shortly because this is a pretty big fire, and that is a lot of smoke that's going up. So again, if you're just joining us, there was a big explosion at this plant in Crosby, at the Chemco plant off of Ramsey Road. Firefighters are responding. This happened, can we get a better idea as to when, what time?
I can give you some new information, okay? That,
Bill Bishop is our managing editor, and he's been getting all the latest.
Am I on your
Do you
mic?
need a mic? You know what? Let me get you here.
I'll just tell you. No.
All right. No, go ahead. I'll let you hold this.
It's just a little bit of an update that Memorial Hermann is responding to this.
Okay.
We've seen 2 Life Flight helicopters
Okay.
that are en route to this scene. We do not know how many people might be injured.
Okay.
That's still to be determined. Another possibility is that people could be taken by ground ambulance to Memorial Hermann Northeast. That's not confirmed. We don't know that yet. So we're still waiting to find out how many people might have been injured in this, if any at all. But you know,
The Harris County Sheriff is saying 2 people injured so
Okay,
far, and
okay.
2 workers at the plant.
Okay,
So
very
that's
good.
all we've heard so far.
Okay.
All right.
So that's it. Just a brief update that Life
Okay.
Flights are en route.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate that. And of course, we're going to bring you the very latest. We're sorry that it's just kind of, it is a breaking news situation, and we're just trying to get the latest information and keep you informed and make sure you know the facts. So, if you're just joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, on our website, we are bringing you this latest information about an explosion in Crosby. This was an incident at the Chemco plant, KMCO. This is on Ramsey Road in Crosby. Again, if you have children in the Crosby school district, right now they are sheltering in place, and we understand that they are turning off the AC because of concerns about about air quality. So the ACs have been turned off. Children are sheltering in place at Crosby schools. All Crosby schools have been told to shelter in place, and we're told that they are not releasing students to parents until it is safe to do so. So if you are a parent and you have a child in Crosby ISD, please do not go to the school just yet. They are not releasing students. They're telling students to stay inside, and they've turned off the ACs there. So that is the latest from that point. We're learning about injuries. Harris County Sheriff has tweeted that at least 2 employees have been injured. We just heard from Managing Editor Bill Bishop that Memorial Hermann had 2 life flight helicopters on the scene. So we don't know the extent of the injuries that these 2 employees have suffered, and we don't know if there are more people who have been injured as a result of this explosion and subsequent fire, and of course all of that black smoke, very reminiscent of what we saw just a few weeks ago with the ITC fire. So this is not what people want to be seeing right now. But so far it looks like firefighters are on the scene. They are trying to put those flames out as soon as possible. We are hearing from, I know a lot of people, like we see a guy named Kryptonite saying those are flames, there are flames. We are live over the scene with Air 11. Prayers to all involved. That's from Francis. Thank you, Francis. So a lot of people commenting that it looks like there are 2 separate fires in there. And it appeared when only when we saw that aerial view. So of course we're keeping tabs on this. And if you look to the top right of your screen where Air 11 is, looks like they've got water on there somehow. So they are working to put those flames out, and we absolutely appreciate it. Again, we just know so far that 2 employees are injured. There may be more people, but we haven't gotten official word. And the 2 employees who are injured, we don't know the extent of their injuries, but we do know that Life Flight has been to the scene and has transported, or is in the process of transporting people to the hospital. And people saying my house shook all the way to LaPorte. A lot of people, you know, from Lake Houston area also reporting that they felt this explosion that happened just a few minutes ago. Do we have a better idea of exactly what time this happened? Do we have Bill, do we have an exact time as to when this explosion happened? An exact time as to when this explosion happened? Okay. We're confirming an exact time, but again, a lot of you saying that you felt this explosion or heard this explosion miles away. And thank you for commenting. Thank you for tuning in. Again, we are live on Facebook, on Periscope, on about 10:45. Okay, so a little earlier this morning, 10:45. So 45 minutes ago at this point is when a lot of people felt this explosion. Some people saying they felt it. Charles Alderman Jr. says he felt it in Channelview. All right. Joanne is asking, my kids are in Sheldon ISD. They received a call about sheltering in place as well. Okay, so let's, we're going to try to confirm that as well. We know that Crosby ISD has required all of its schools and facilities to shelter in place, but it looks like we're waiting to confirm if Sheldon ISD. Can someone help us confirm that Sheldon ISD is saying that they are also sheltering in place? A woman has commented and said that. So we are... Thank you for rolling with us. We are just trying to get you the latest on this explosion that happened about 45 minutes ago. This was in Crosby, but this explosion was felt miles away. It happened around 10:45 a.m. Sheldon ISD, okay, confirming that Sheldon ISD schools are also sheltering in place. Thank you so much to our viewer who gave us a heads up on that. That's why we love when you interact with us, when we cut in with this breaking news, because this gets us the most active information to our public. Let's go ahead and keep looking at some of these comments here. People in LaPorte reporting that they heard it. Thank you so much, Toy, for letting us know. We are still live from Air 11. Now we see that one of the Life Flight helicopters is on the ground. There are at least 2 ambulances on the ground as well. And again, all we know so far is that 2 employees have been injured and have been or are in the process of being transported to Memorial Hermann Hospital. We don't know the extent of their injuries. And now we have learned that not only Crosby ISD, but Sheldon ISD is also sheltering in place right now. So if you have a student at one of those schools, please don't go and try to pick them up. We are actually going to be, they said, sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty here. If you have a child in Crosby ISD or Sheldon ISD, if you're a parent, I realize you're probably very concerned right now, but please don't head to the schools to pick them up. Schools are not releasing those children until they believe it is safe to do so. So those kids are inside, they're safe, they're sheltering in place. We know that they're turning off the AC units, trying to keep some of that black smoke and that air from coming into the school. So that is a safety precaution that they're taking. But right now, the main concern is to get those flames out. A couple of our viewers have noticed that it doesn't look like just 1 flame, but 2. And again, this explosion happened around 10:45 this morning in Crosby at the KMCO plant. That's on Ramsey Road. We, of course, have the Crosby Volunteer Fire Department there and several other fire departments responding to this and trying to get a hold of that fire. And right now, again, you're still looking at a live look. This looks to be an area obviously close to the scene. You've got police officers. We just saw a life flight helicopter in the parking lot. And we are looking to see that people say they felt this as far as Deer Park, Clear Lake. A lot of people saying that their houses shook when this explosion happened. So thank you. Keep commenting. Again, we are live on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We have our updates on our website and Twitter. So we are live on all platforms. We want to get this information as soon as possible. Bill, do you have another update?
Sheldon yet?
Yes, we have mentioned Sheldon is also sheltering in place. Thank you. Dory says it rattled my garage door in Atascocita. Wow. Okay, so for Miles, this explosion was felt. Again, this happened around 10:45. And we are watching this scene unfold. What you're looking at right now from Air 11 is this parking lot here where you see two ambulances. You had two life flight helicopters at one point on the ground. And again, firefighters are also on the scene, obviously closer to the plant, trying to get those flames put out. And I'm just going to ask for, is it possible to, we're going to, okay, there we go. All right. Someone said they heard a faint boom here on I-10 near Wayside. All right, so from miles away, people can hear this, heard this explosion, I should say, about 45 minutes ago. And of course, you can see that black smoke. Let's see, Air 11 is pulling out right now. And there it is. At the top of your screen, you can see all of that black smoke coming from the Chemco plant on Ramsey Road. So it looks like they are dealing again with another fire there. Folks not really happy about this, especially after everything that people had gone through with the ITC fire, an explosion, and black smoke is just not something you want to be seeing right now. Looks like one life flight helicopter may be taking off soon. There are two ambulances there. Again, the only information we have so far is that the Harris County Sheriff's Office has confirmed that 2 employees are injured. We don't know the extent of their injuries, but obviously life flight is there, and there is an urgency to get them medical help as soon as possible. Again, this is happening at the Chemco plant in Crosby. Thank you to everyone who's commenting and weighing in. Again, Facebook Live, on YouTube, on our website, on Twitter. We are getting you updates as soon as we can. Air 11 now panning back to the scene of the fire. And you see at least one. A lot of people have been commenting on a couple things, that you see 2 separate fires within the facility. So we're trying to confirm that and see kind of where they originated. 2, a lot of people are seeing this black smoke now for miles. Same people who say that they felt the explosion happen around 10:45. And we again are looking at this. Thank you so much. Charles saying, my mother felt and heard it in LaPorte. A lot of people in LaPorte saying that they are that they felt this explosion. And right now, if you're just joining us, we are doing our continuing coverage on KHOU. Let's join our other streams right now.
Maybe about the nature of any potential injuries. Our investigative reporter, Jeremy Rogowski, is miking up here, and again, sadly, a little bit familiar given the events of the past 2 or 3 weeks here. Last time you were up here telling us about the background on ITC. That is still in its way an active situation. Are you ready to talk to us a little bit about
Yeah,
this?
obviously this is very fluid. We're learning it as we get it, so bear with us. One of our producers with KHU11 Investigates has been listening to scanner traffic from Crosby Fire and EMS. That's a volunteer fire department. And here's what he is hearing over that radio dispatch traffic. Initial reports say there were multiple injuries at this scene, specifically multiple employees of this chemical plant that were injured. One other detail that came across the scanner traffic was that one patient apparently suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns to his or her face and hands. So we're getting a little bit better of an initial picture of the potential injuries from this chemical plant explosion, Sherman. Again, multiple employees from the scanner traffic. We don't know a firm number, but it was described as multiple. And as you see, we have some ambulances waiting by. 2 life flight helicopters as well, you can see staged at that nearby parking lot, potentially to take the injured to a nearby hospital. So 2nd and 3rd degree burns to face and hands is the initial report, multiple injuries. Let's talk a little bit about this company as well. The background, they are a custom chemical processing and specialty chemical manufacturing plant. Let's put that in English. They are, from what appears, according to their website, they are a third-party manufacturer of raw materials. So a chemical company will come to them, according to their website, and say, we need you to blend these various chemicals to make a new chemical, whether it's through a distillation process or whatnot. But they're dealing with the following products. We don't know what's on fire here, but we can tell you what this plant normally deals with according to its website. They deal with glycol products. They deal with antifreeze products, brake fluid, and various other oil field products. So that gives you a general picture of what perhaps may be burning in here. Again, glycol, antifreeze, brake fluid, and other oil field products is what this KMCO plant, according to its website, deals with. They are a toll manufacturing facility. Again, in simple terms, this is a third party which would take raw materials and through various manufacturing processes blend them together to create a new product and ultimately sell that back to various chemical companies. A little bit more about the makeup of this plant, Sherman. According to their website, this Crosby facility has about 180 full-time employees. Of course, we don't know if those 180 were all on scene here this morning, but generally speaking, according to the website, 180 full-time employees. Over 600 tanks at this facility. Obviously, we can see the pictures along with you at home and online, some of those tanks apparently burning. 28 reactors. Don't have more details on that, exactly what that means in terms of reactors, but again, this coming from this company's website, 28 reactors, and also 250 rail storage spots. So obviously, you have lots of ways to store these various chemicals, whether it be by rail car or in tanks.
All right, and the bad news is it looks like it is spewing out even more heavy smoke than when we first began. The note here, by the way, from the Harris County Sheriff, Ed Gonzalez, who's been tweeting about this, is saying that this chemical, he's calling it a chemical plant fire in East Harris County. It is off Old Highway 90, and they are shutting that roadway down now. He is saying preliminary information indicates that 2 employees are potentially injured, that he is en route to the scene now as well. This is going to be off of Highway 90 near Krennic Road. And as always, in a situation like this, the big question, of course, is where the wind is blowing, what kind of impact that might have on the weather. Our Cheetah Craft standing by with a look at that. Cheetah.
Tracking completely calm winds. So winds earlier this morning were out of the northeast. We're now looking at winds pretty much across the area. So with winds almost less than 5 miles per hour across the board here, that smoke not going to really have a lot of way to travel here. But with winds out of the northeast, if it will carry more towards the southwest direction. So we will continue to monitor here into the upper northwest region, northeast region of Harris County, and of course the lower southeast region of Liberty County. But otherwise, really, winds are mostly calm. I will say with clear skies, calm winds, that smoke doesn't have a whole lot of way to travel. So if anything, we're just going to notice, you know, again, we had that air quality alert already in effect today. So added pollution, that added ozone already an issue, and then double this on top of it. We'll continue to monitor any of the air quality monitors out there, Sherman, but otherwise right now, winds are mostly calm across the board.
All right, those air quality monitors are getting a workout. They have obviously been in heavy use over in the Deer Park area with the TCEQ, the EPA. Their incident commanders, I believe, still on site in the Deer Park area monitoring that situation there. and they may be drafted to come up north now, northeast, to this chemical plant in Crosby. You have something else?
We have a little bit more on the timeline of how this all unfolded here this morning. Again, this coming from the Crosby dispatch, fire and EMS dispatch that we have our producers listening to and monitoring. Around 10:43 is when heavy smoke was when the initial explosion was reported. Again, this all according to emergency dispatch traffic. 10:43, heavy smoke visible. Right around 11 o'clock, that report we just mentioned of multiple employees injured. Around 10:06 was when we heard reports of one patient having 2nd and 3rd-degree burns to their face and hands. There was a radio transmission trying to account for other patients at this time, so obviously a little bit of urgency coming across the scanner traffic. About a half an hour later, we hear that Harris County Hazmat has been notified, presumably en route on scene. And a few minutes after that, they have a triage center, which is perhaps what we were seeing from the air here in this parking lot, a triage center where those ambulances were staging along with the airlift helicopters to transport the injured should they need to be airlifted to an area hospital. And of course, there was 2 helicopters there as well.
And you can see flames still going on actively back there, and some firefighting apparatus is on the ground there, pouring what looks like water, I'm going to guess. We know from past experience that foam is also often a component to these kinds of fires. We should let people know that Crosby ISD issued a shelter-in-place for its students. Shortly thereafter, Sheldon ISD followed suit as well. And you're looking at both live and videotaped images from earlier in this fire in both of these boxes delivered by Air 11.
And Sherman, we should also mention in the era of social media, you know, everybody's a reporter to a certain extent with their cell phones and their observations and so forth. Some other producers informing us that some themes are emerging from social platforms, Twitter and Facebook and the like, and that a lot of people are saying it physically shook their homes several minutes and several miles away. So whatever exploded here this morning, certainly the impact was felt by folks not just adjacent to this chemical plant, but as far as 5 minutes, several miles presumably away. So that's certainly noteworthy from what we're hearing on social media.
Yeah, in fact, our assistant news director, his wife called in. They live up in that area. I think they are a few miles away, but she indicated that, yeah.
They are several miles away, certainly.
Okay,
yeah.
And that she felt that on the ground shake and tremble underneath when that blast occurred.
Again, this plant, KMCO, is located on Ramsey Road in Crosby. They are a custom chemical processing and specialty chemical manufacturing plant. We know from the company's website that they deal with the following products: glycol products, with several different types of glycol that I won't even begin to pronounce. Antifreeze products, brake fluid products, and other oil field products, as well as a cement grinding manufacturing facility. So obviously, without knowing more, certainly very flammable chemicals that they're dealing with. Nothing immediately speaks to, although we don't want to put any cart before any horse, nothing that immediately speaks to something of the nature of benzene and the like, although we'll pause on that. I'm just reading from what the company manufactures on its website. Again, the facility has total about 180 full-time employees and 600 tanks at this plant in Crosby. They have 28 reactors and around 250 rail storage spots. So obviously a lot of places to keep chemicals. We also know they manufacture, according to their own website, more than 900 million pounds of product a year. They are a, go ahead please.
I was just going to say our producers are telling us that we have a representative from the Harris County Fire Marshal's office on the line, Rachel Moreno. Are you there, Rachel?
I am.
Excellent. All right, what can you tell us about this fire?
So the fire is at a plant called Kimco. We just arrived on scene, so I don't have a whole lot of information, but I am being told that we do have 2 injuries. Unfortunately, I don't know the extent of those at this moment, but we are on scene, and we'll start evaluating and provide info as soon as we have it.
We understand that the 2 school districts there have issued a shelter in place. Can you tell us anything about that for other residents, local businesses, and the status of the plant? Are they trying to get employees out from any certain perimeter?
At this time, I don't have that information. I did hear that those school districts were sheltered in place. Again, we just arrived on scene, so I'm working to get all of that info and push it out as soon as we can.
Okay, so you are actually here at that facility at Kimco?
Yes, ma'am. I just arrived.
Rachel, what departments are responding? We obviously have been listening to Crosby Fire and EMS. Is this a mutual aid scenario where Houston Fire, HFD, is also on scene, or just from your firsthand observations, can you give us a picture of what units from what departments are on scene?
Sure. So right now we have Harris County Hazmat on scene, Huffman Fire Department, Crosby Fire Department, and those are the only ones I've seen so far. But yes, I'm sure there is a mutual aid that has gone out, and we will see more departments responding shortly.
Do you know what chemical or chemicals are on fire? Is there any more information to share with us on that front?
At this point, I do not know. Like I said, I'm literally walking up to the scene right now, and hopefully can get that information to you shortly.
What are the next steps? What does the Fire Marshal's office want to learn in the immediate near future?
So what we need to do first is get the fire out, make sure the community is safe. After that happens, we will start our investigation and, again, try to figure out what was the cause of the fire and what started it.
Have you been in contact with the company itself? Has your office?
I have not, no. I'm not sure if our office has or not. Again, we just arrived on scene.
Obviously, putting the fire out is the priority. Just curious, do you know yet what plan of attack? Will you be using the foam? Or what's going on the fire now? Is that water that we were seeing?
As of right now, I can't really speak to that. I'm not with the fire department, but again, I will do my best to get that information to you as soon as I can.
Rachel Moreno, thanks so much for spending a couple minutes with us. We'd like to check back with you in a few minutes as you learn more.
Yeah, and one quick question. I'm just curious, from your vantage point on the ground, can you smell anything in the air?
I actually do not smell anything in the air. There is a large black plume of smoke from the fire, but I actually do not smell anything at this point.
All right. Okay, Rachel Moreno, thank you very much. We hope to talk with you in a couple of minutes when you've learned some more. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
And I think I'm getting a signal from the floor. Were we trying to speak to somebody else here at this point? No? Okay, all righty. We're efforting some other folks on the phone and other areas, but there you hear it. Among those responding to this incident is the Harris County Fire Marshal's office, and then
Harris County Hazmat, as well as 2 fire departments, according to Rachel Moreno, that being Huffman and Crosby fire departments. Of course, oftentimes the smaller fire departments have a mutual aid agreement with larger departments, such as Houston Fire. At least from Rachel's vantage point, she has not seen any apparatus from HFD, but of course, I think it is safe to assume that if needed, they will be called upon to come out. Again, this is the Chemco chemical plant on Ramsey Road in Crosby. We have a shelter in place for 1 school district.
For 2, actually,
Thank
for
you.
Crosby ISD and Sheldon ISD, and we're efforting to learn if other, if any neighborhoods will be asked to shelter in place, businesses, and also working to learn what the situation is on the Chemco facility as well, whether they are trying to move folks out or not.
We talked about the products that this plant deals with on a normal basis, those being glycol products, antifreeze, brake fluid, and other oil field products. We certainly at this point don't know what is on fire. We do know that this plant in total has more than 600 tanks on site. Certainly this fire from Air 11 appears to be contained to 1 area at this point, at least. And in terms of injuries, we heard of 2 injuries from radio emergency dispatch. We heard 1 of those patients may have suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns to their hands and face. We know there is a staging area nearby where at least 2 ambulances were on ground along with 2 helicopters. at the ready on standby to take patients where they need to go.
Yeah, boy, is that dramatic, and sadly a bit of a flashback to the last 2 or 3 weeks ago. One of the questions we've learned to ask from the most recent incident over at Deer Park is about the smoke, its direction, its elevation, because that is the question about contaminants in the air. Our Cheetah Craft has been looking into that. What can you tell us, Cheetah?
Yeah, okay, I'm tracking that smoke plume, and we're going to continue to see how far in elevation that's continuing to climb. I will say with clear skies and calm winds, really there's nothing impacting it as far as where the smoke is traveling, with the exception of we do have northeast winds, but they're mostly calm. What this means is that smoke not going to get a forceful push or pull of direction. Now, if it does continue to travel, it will meander here from the northeast down to the southwest region. So that means from the Crosby area right through Harris County and maybe into portions of southwest Harris County. Those are the areas. So it will be this direction that we will continue to monitor here. But again, winds are mostly calm. Winds are not going to play a big role today. But if this continues to become an issue, when they will, is early tomorrow morning. Check this out. By this evening, we're still going to be tracking these really calm northeasterly winds. But overnight into our Wednesday, that's when a very strong southeasterly wind is going to set up. That's going to increase the humidity and the cloud cover. So anything that does try to evaporate will eventually get trapped in by cloud cover. So that's going to happen in our overnight hours. Right now, I'll tell you that smoke, yeah, it's just going to continue to lift into the upper levels of the atmosphere because nothing is pretty much allowing to trap it. And we're not getting a strong push or pull from these winds. So I'm going to continue to watch for some of these air quality monitors, guys. I'm going to see if they change. So far, I haven't seen anything, but with the shelter in place, I'm expecting they probably will. So I'll get back to you, of course, when I get that latest information as well.
All right, thanks for keeping an eye on that. That is one of the big questions as this fire continues to burn. Air quality, then afterwards runoff, if they bring any foam in to help put this thing down, all of that becomes environmental issues that folks in the area are going to care about. As we pull out a little bit and we're zooming around with our with Air 11, you can see it looks like one of those air ambulances has lifted off. This is the green one that presumably was in the parking lot. It is a Lifelight helicopter. We can read that on the side of the chopper, and it is airborne now, leaving the scene. There was a second air ambulance on the ground. You can see that is still there, the red one, and it may be waiting for a potential patient. Also some ground ambulances there as well. That's kind of gives you, bear with us, it is obviously a very fluid situation as our cameras pan around to see, what's going on.
And Trinman, we have our Janelle Bluto at Highway 90 and Church Street, I believe. She's in a neighborhood a couple of miles from here. Janelle, can you hear us? What's the latest from your vantage point there?
Hey guys, yeah, so we're actually in a neighborhood about 2 miles south of that fire. You can see it right here behind me. As you can see from the ground, that smoke is actually going very high into the sky. It is very black on the ground, and then once it drifts off, it turns gray. So that is a little bit different than the ITC fire, where the smoke seemed to go very low, much lower than this is, and it was much thicker and much blacker, especially as it carried off into the sky. So obviously we still have to learn about what's exactly burning on site. You could see the smoke from about 20 miles away driving up here. Lots of emergency responders, people on scene. We saw some emergency responders when we drove up wearing masks, probably just because of the unknown of what's burning right now. We want to come out here. We're out in this neighborhood right now. We're hoping to talk to some neighbors to see what they heard, to see if they felt anything. We've obviously heard those reports of people feeling their houses shake. These people, though, coming up here was very reminiscent of when we were here just, less than 2 years ago. These people have dealt with this before with Arkema. That's only 3 miles north of where we are here. They all had to be evacuated for days while their homes were underwater. We're hoping to talk to people out here today to see if they're staying inside, what they're doing, because we know those 2 school districts are sheltering in place. So, guys, as we learn to find out, we hope to get more information from officials here soon. We know Sheriff Gonzalez has been tweeting. Hopefully they'll have a live press conference here in a little bit to tell us exactly what happened on that site. But guys, stay with us. I know you guys are doing live reports. We're going to go check in and try and find some neighbors, and then we'll bring bring them back to you and tell you what they have to say, guys.
Hey, before you run off, Janelle, I'm just curious on the ground there, and I know you're a bit a ways, but do you smell anything in the air? Do you notice any, you know, in the Deer Park situation, there was ash that had ended up on the ground. Just wondering what you notice about your immediate environment. Any impact or no?
Yeah, Sherman, you know, so being on ground at ITC, you smelled the gasoline. It was very strong there, and you obviously did feel the ash. This, of course, has not yet had any impacts on us, and like I said, we are pretty far away from it. The smoke is much less thick than ITC, and it's going, from where we're standing, it looks to be a lot higher into the sky, and I'm not sure exactly what's causing it to do that, but on the ground here, it doesn't feel anything out of the ordinary. We feel fine from where we are. That's why we stayed here. We, of course, don't plan to get much any closer than this because like we know we have no idea what's happening behind us. So, and we saw those law enforcement officials and everybody wearing the mask. So I think those are just out of precaution right now until we find out exactly what's happening. But as for right now, no, I don't feel. Derek, do you feel or smell? No, we don't feel any different. We feel fine. So we're going to stay over here until, and as soon as if we start to feel differently, we will obviously pull back a little bit. But yeah, so we feel okay out here right now.
All right, take care. Thank you very much, Janelle.
We should mention from the Harris County Office of Emergency Management that Harris County Pollution Control is also en route to assist, and obviously, hopefully armed with some of those portable monitors that we've been talking about now for the better part of 2 weeks that were used down in the Deer Park area, which can offer some pretty immediate readings for volatile organic chemicals and other dangerous toxins in the air. So we have Harris County Pollution Control, we have Harris County Hazmat on scene, 2 fire departments, the Huffman Fire Department and the Crosby Volunteer Fire Department, as well as that nearby staging area to this plant in Crosby where we saw some ambulances, as well as 2 Life Flight helicopters. So far, only 2 reported injuries that we know of from scanner traffic. We heard 1 patient possibly suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns to their hands and face. No condition reported on the other patient.
You know, it'll be interesting to see. ReadyHarris.org has been keeping those real-time updates about the air quality monitors that so many people have been checking in with on a daily basis. That from Deer Park. There's a special tab for it on ReadyHarris.org. We will see whether something similar will be set up now for the Crosby situation, which may be comforting to local residents. At least they'll have a place to check for immediate information. Rekha Mudaraj joining us now.
And we keep talking about air quality. Obviously, when people see that big plume of black smoke, that is a big concern. For the parents who are watching, if you have children in Crosby ISD or Sheldon ISD, those schools, all buildings associated with those ISDs are sheltering in place right now. They're also turning off the HVAC units because they don't want to bring in any possible chemicals that may be lingering in the air or as a result of this fire. So the good thing is it's a cool day. It's not like it's in the middle of summer and there'll be sweltering heat. So they are doing that as a precaution, turning off the AC units. Don't want to circulate that air inside the building in case there are any dangerous chemicals that are burning in that fire right now. We've been hearing from our reporters on the scene who say so far they don't smell anything in the air, which is very different from the ITC chemical fire when you could smell that sweet smell of benzene, and there were whiffs of that our reporters on the ground were reported smelling. But right now, maybe too early on to tell, because we are keeping our reporters a good distance from the scene. Of course, we want our reporters on the ground to be safe. So when you saw Janelle Bluda, she was a good distance away from that fire, and it looked like she was in a church where it appears to be a staging area. We've seen Life Flight helicopters land there. We've seen ambulances set up there. But again, as we talk about people being transferred to the hospital, we know that so far, according to the Harris County Sheriff, there are only 2 people who have been injured so far. Still don't know the extent of the injuries, but Jeremy Rogalski, you have reported that scanner traffic indicates that at least one of them suffered burns, which would make sense with this explosion and fire that, again, if you're just joining us, all started around 10:45 this morning, and that explosion was felt from miles away. We were on our Facebook Live earlier, and of course on YouTube, and we were streaming this earlier on our website, and so many people were weighing in saying that they felt it as far as Lake Houston and LaPorte, and people not only heard the bang and heard the explosion, but felt their house shake and saw their things shake in their home, their furniture shake. And so this was a pretty powerful explosion. A lot of people also noting that as we look from Air 11, there may be 2 different fires at this scene, all kind of contained within that plant right there within the facility, but we saw flames shooting out from 2 different areas there. But there are firefighters on scene who are trying to get a grip on all of this, and we know that it's going to be a while until that black smoke is going to dissipate.
Just like with the ITC fire, Reka and Sherman, one of the things we always want to do as journalists is also look at a company's history. And we're beginning to do that as well. Our producers at KHU11 Investigates. They went back several decades looking at violations with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, who obviously is the regulatory arm for the state when it comes to air quality and water quality laws. Initially, we found 10 violations for this Chemco company, racking up about $131,000 in fines. The highest of which was about $35,000 back in 2013 when the company, according to state regulators, released too much carbon monoxide emissions and didn't conduct the proper tests. So that's something that we'll continue to look at. On the OSHA front, this is, of course, the Federal Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration. I believe I have that right. But this is when there's a workplace injury in these chemical plants. Those are the folks who come in. We also looked initially at this company's OSHA history, and it was cited for 66 violations, 65 of which were serious. And from 2010 to 2013, they were fined nearly $250,000. We're obviously looking to learn more about that. One of the violations dealt with not having proper respiratory protections, safety of highly hazardous chemicals, and emergency plans. Again, that is just an initial pass-through, an initial look, but it's obviously something that is important because this could be a complete accident or it can be some sort of negligence. We're not saying one way or the other where it is, but it's important to look at the company's history for that context and perspective.
You know, you were mentioning, as we know, this day and age, we have a lot of citizen journalists, as it were, out there, thanks to cell phones. And as you look at the Twitter feed, lots of pictures being posted. And we've also got some Snapchat video that was posted a little while ago from one of our viewers. You can see the timestamp on it, 10:57 a.m. So this individual, not far away, looks like they are maybe in a shopping mall parking lot. So we've got a couple of viewers here who have been sending in clips just after that explosion. 10:57 is the timestamp on that.
And it looks like Janelle actually standing by with an interview on the ground. Janelle?
Janelle Bluda.
And so obviously there's a lot of traffic, just people trying to, sorry guys, just want to make sure you guys can hear me, just people just trying to come back and forth to see what's going on. Standing with me here is Roosevelt Stanley. He lives just down the road. But Stanley, you came out here. Tell me why you came out here today.
Well, the reason why I came up here, I was in my house and watching TV. All at once I heard a big noise in my house shook. And I came outside and looked. I thought maybe it was an accident right there on 2190 where I live. And I didn't see no accident or nothing. And then I walked the back of my house. I see all that smoke, black smoke in there. So then I drove up here to see what was going on.
Does it give you, are you concerned about it?
Yes, ma'am. We had one not long ago. Explosion not long ago and messed up things, you know what I mean? And I don't know. So I thought maybe it was the same one exploded like the one in Pasadena, Deer Park. That's the reason why, when I look and see, I said, the same plant and blowed up again. That's what I thought. And so that's the reason why I came up here, because I knew where it was at. But that vibration, that shook my whole house. I got a big old wood house, you know, on blocks. Right there on Kenny Road on the feeder, on the new 90. Kenny Road in Hampton Street.
Are you concerned about breathing the air out here right now?
Yes, ma'am. I was looking. That's what I was looking to see, because the north wind was coming out. That north that came up, but the wind's supposed to change to the east. But I was looking at that smoke, how that smoke be whooping around up in the air. That's what I was looking at. And you know, the last time, you know, we had our eyes burning and all that kind of stuff, you know. But right now, I don't know. It seems like the wind changed. I don't know what it might do later on, though. You know what I mean? If it go for the north, it'll go right straight into my neighborhood.
So what are you going to do now? You going to go back home? You going to leave?
I'm gonna go back home and put me a nose mask on.
Okay. All right. Well, go take care of yourself. Thank you for talking to us, okay?
Okay, thank you, man.
All right.
Y'all have a great day.
You too. So, guys, kind of the theme out here is going up and down, talking to people who are coming and going. People are either just checking out the fire, but I did speak to some residents who are like, I'm getting out of here. They were leaving. And I actually talked to an employee who works just down the road. He said that he was called to leave work, so they've been evacuated. So we're going to probably move a little bit further away just because, you know, we're hearing all these other people are leaving, so we're probably going to move as well. And we'll bring another update to you guys here in a little bit.
All right, stay safe. Yeah, step back if that's what you need to do.
Right now, we just got some new information that the TCEQ has dispatched emergency personnel to this situation here in Crosby, where this explosion happened around 10:45. That personnel will be conducting sort of an initial assessment as to what exactly is going up into the air. Of course, a lot of people concerned after seeing the fire out of the ITC facility in Deer Park, and concerns over benzene and other chemicals, pie gas, stuff that was in the air, and the air quality. So TCEQ does have people heading on the ground to the area to do an initial assessment, as they will be continuing, we hope, the air quality in the next few hours and over the next few days after this explosion in Crosby.
And may well be carrying some of those handheld air monitors, those mobile air monitors that they have been using heavily over at the Deer Park facility to gather some initial information about what may be in the air. The good news, Cheetah Craft sharing with us a little bit earlier that the weather seems to be cooperating a bit. There's nothing, you know, dampening down that column of smoke. It is allowing it to rise up and hopefully dissipate. We're seeing another helicopter pass right in front of that plume of smoke. We did see one air ambulance lift off. We presume it has taken a patient to the hospital. A second air ambulance was still on the ground. We have not seen that one leave yet.
You know, one of the things that we heard from the ITC fire was that the best case scenario is that the smoke just goes straight up and dissipates. The farther away it is from the ground, the better it is for folks, especially living in that area, and the less exposure essentially that you'll get to whatever is burning in the air. So it's good to see, as you mentioned, that the smoke just seems to be going directly up and hopefully getting high enough and dissipating. So that's our main hope as they put out the flames. We don't really know, though. We haven't had a close-up look at the situation right now. Again, we were seeing flames shooting out of the plant facility a few moments ago. It looks like Air 11 still is over the scene, but I haven't seen flames, and that might be a good thing. It could be an indication that they're getting control of this fire, but there's certainly still a lot of smoke. Jeremy, did you have something?
Well, again, we don't know what chemical is on fire, but to just recap from the company's website what Chemco normally deals with, they deal with a variety of glycol products, antifreeze products, brake fluid products, and other oil field products. We continue to listen to emergency scanner traffic to see if any emergency officials have gotten word on what this tank or tanks that have exploded contained. So we're waiting on that. Add to the list of the agencies, we talked about Harris County Pollution Control on scene, Harris County Hazmat, and we heard from the Fire Marshal's office earlier that 2 fire departments were dispatched and on scene, the Crosby Fire Department as well as the Huffman Fire Department. So that is kind of an overview of the emergency responders on scene.
Taking a look just at sort of the Google Maps situation of the scene, it looks like residential areas are maybe about a mile back. There's a Crosby Estates to the east of the plant, a mobile home park, again, about a mile to the south, and then to the southwest is Crosby Kindergarten. So immediate buffer, so there's not, you know, homes right up to the plant, but maybe about a mile away you're starting to see some residences. The Crosby ISD and the Sheldon ISD campuses now all sheltering in place because of this.
And turning off their HVAC systems. They posted on social media, which I find a very important note, given now our learning curve, we're getting somewhat used to this, and that obviously, so you're not sucking any outside air that may be potentially contaminated. You want to shut that out, windows down, doors locked, doors closed.
And to add to that, parents who have kids at those school districts, oftentimes you'll see this, you'll panic, you'll probably head there. Please do not. The children are still sheltering in place. Schools and other Crosby and Sheldon ISD buildings, everyone, employees sheltering in place right now. Kids will not be released. Kids will not be put on school buses until this situation is figured out. And essentially, first responders are giving those schools the all clear to let those kids go. But right now, sheltering in place, AC units have been turned off, and they're just going to wait it out until they can get a grip on this fire. And of course, that big column of black smoke that's going up into the air that can be seen from miles away.
And this has been a very bad day for incidents at chemical and related manufacturing facilities. We have some video now from a fire. This is going to be in North Houston, and it is at a fiberglass plant. This is in North Houston on Sellers Road. Some Snapchat video. You're seeing that burn, and this looks like it was posted, posted by Aldine, maybe in the Aldine area off of Houston. You can see some of the text also that is that's being added to these video images. So now, what are we looking at right now? Is this the fiberglass plant? Okay, all right, that looks like it was pretty dramatic as well a little bit earlier. We don't have any word yet on potential injuries in that situation. This is unrelated, obviously, one in Houston, one in Crosby, but as you can see, fairly dramatic on the north side of Houston as well. And this again from our viewers who have cell phones and are taking quick clips of that plume of smoke. Also, again, going pretty much straight up, it looks like. But we are working to find out what caused that situation and whether or not there are any injuries there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking about the departments responding. This is back to the fire in Crosby that we've been watching since about 10:45 this morning. Okay, I still see the flames. You were talking about whether the fires may be out. There's flames burning from that area right there, kind of to the left side of your screen. Harris County Fire Marshal's office confirmed that obviously Huffman and Crosby Fire and EMS are on the scene. Harris County Hazmat is on the scene. And again, two school districts in the area, Sheldon and Crosby ISD, are sheltering in place. Air quality is a big issue, but more importantly, where is this all going? Where is this smoke headed? What direction is the wind blowing? I know that Cheetah Craft has been giving us updates on the weather. Cheetah, is any changes, anything we should be concerned about right now?
No, we're not tracking any change in the wind, but as you see these images of the smoke just kind of filling the sky, I wanted to put some perspective behind this here. So we're thinking right now the smoke could be upwards of about 5,000 to 7,000 feet in the atmosphere. So think of this, okay? When you're looking at some of the downtown skyline buildings here, you would have to stack 5 of the highest building here on top of one another to kind of give you an equivalent of how far the smoke is traveling. Now, typically planes fly at about 34,000 feet, so that's well below, of course, where we're talking about that jet stream or anything like that. But anywhere from about 5,000 to 10,000 feet, that's a good kind of judge right now of how far that smoke is traveling as high in the atmosphere. Because we don't have clouds in place, it's not going to give us a cap or kind of an inversion with some of that smoke. We are tracking calm winds, though. I wish we had slightly higher winds. It would help to mix out some of the smoke at the lower levels of the atmosphere, but because the winds are calm, that's why you see kind of that thick, dense black cloud of smoke so tightly compacted together at low levels of the atmosphere, because we're just not seeing that natural mixing. If we did have higher wind gusts, it would help to kind of mix that out. Now, winds overall 5 to 10 miles per hour out of the northeast. What this means for you: if you are anywhere in more central to southwest Harris County, those are the areas that will probably see some of this smoke first. Again, we're not talking strong enough winds. It's going to give this a big push. It's going to be kind of those, it's going to be kind of wobble back and forth as it tries to move across the area, but I'm not expecting much of a change until our overnight hours. The biggest impact probably that the winds will play, if any, will be by early tomorrow morning. For the rest of the day today, winds are going to be so calm and skies are expected to remain so clear that the National Weather Service already for the afternoon had issued an air quality alert. So there was already an ozone watch today because of the clear skies and calm winds. When you factor in additional smoke in the atmosphere, that's just going to lead to added particles. Now, I haven't seen a change in the moderate levels for our air quality. That's really mainly for sensitive groups. If you have asthma, emphysema, you already wanted to keep it indoors. If you're just a little more sensitive to those added ozone particles, and now now we're talking additional smoke. Now, there is that shelter in place, of course, for the schools in Crosby that y'all have been talking about. But other than that, I haven't seen a change. Now, I'll continue to watch it. And if those TCEQ levels change, of course, we will let you know here. But already the air quality was going to be an issue today, guys. So, but that smoke plume probably around 5,000 to 7,000 feet. I'll continue to monitor that here on our radar site as well. But just keep that in mind. I'll send it back to you.
All right, sort of a mixed bag of good, bad news in the weather department. Yeah, we can see, oh, you can see now the edges of some of the metal and the steel equipment there just crumpled over at the bottom where they are presumably pouring water onto the flames. We have now heard that there is one person unaccounted for in this fire. This is from Harris County Fire Marshal's office tweeting that one person is unaccounted for, 2 people are injured, and we understand that Lifelight is returning to pick up potentially a third patient. Yeah, CPR being performed, we understand, on a patient out there. And we should note, as you would expect, the Harris County Sheriff saying that some of the roads out there are being closed down to traffic, obviously because of this situation.
And you saw our reporter Janelle Bluto's on the ground, and she was talking to folks who live in the area. She's also being held back and is staying a safe distance again from this fire, because we don't know what chemicals may be burning, and we just want to make sure that everyone is safe. In the meantime, the TCEQ from the Houston Regional Office has dispatched emergency response personnel. Again, they're heading to the scene right now to conduct an initial assessment of this chemical plant fire that's happening and burning in Crosby. And if you see that kind of pulled back shot, you can see the smoke from miles away. Because earlier this morning, when this explosion happened around 10:45, people reported hearing and feeling it from miles away, from Lake Houston to LaPorte. I mean, a lot of people, even in the downtown area of Houston, were responding to us on our Facebook Live that they also felt their walls shake a little bit and wondered what that was from. So we have been watching this fire now since 10:45 this morning after this explosion at the chemical plant in Crosby, and we know that 2 school districts are sheltering in place right now. They're not letting students out. They need to make sure that they assess the situation, make sure it is safe, so the students are being kept indoors, HVAC turned off, so we don't circulate any potential harmful air and those chemicals that might be in that plume of smoke into the schools. And parents, your students will not be released until they've deemed it safe enough to let those kids get out, leave school, and of course get on those school buses in a couple of hours.
And we've got some interesting videos, well, a time lapse that was sent in to us from a viewer, and that was taken from a little bit of a distance, but hopefully that will show us, yeah, there you go. You can see, yeah, it's a ways away, but boy, it just sort of pops up into the air like that, and then you can see it, the smoke burning up into the air.
And it gets thicker, obviously, as you see when you're watching this. That smoke gets darker and thicker, and there's a lot more. That's a really interesting
fuel
to
for
see.
the fire, as it were. And as we have been looking at the live pictures from Air 11, I mean, you can see part of that structure has simply collapsed and crumpled in on itself because of the tremendous heat. And it continues to burn as we get another live picture here. Again, 3 people injured now, 1 unaccounted for. Lifelight returning, active CPR going on 1 individual, we are told. Maybe that plume of smoke maybe getting a little smaller. Does it look
Sherman,
like
we're just actually hearing that it's actually a warehouse on site at this facility, at the Chemco facility, that has caught fire. So that is from the Harris County Fire Marshal's office. They don't know what that warehouse contains. They don't know what is in there and what exactly is on fire, but we've just been told that it is a warehouse on the grounds that has caught fire.
The Harris County Sheriff also tweeting out that they are holding a staging area in the 2500 block of Highway 90. They've also closed off some of the roads in that area, and that the students who are sheltering in place will not be released until they deem it is safe to let them out of school for the day. They are obviously taking great care because it's a
late word from, Sherman, from the Harris County Sheriff's Office. They're just issued a shelter in place for all residents within a 1-mile radius of this plant. Again, Chemco chemical plant on Ramsey Road. That's obviously in northeast Harris County in Crosby. A shelter in place issued by Sheriff Ed Gonzalez for all residents within a 1 mile radius. You were looking at an overview map earlier, Sherman, and I suppose fortunately there didn't seem to be a large concentration of residential. Here's a better look.
There we go, yeah.
And it's hard to tell from the scale from this, but there's no immediate subdivisions butting up to this plan.
Yeah, so if you're looking at this, roughly about a mile to the east will be Crosby Estates. If you see that red dot in the middle, if you just draw a line straight across to your right there on the screen, you'll see that subdivision. That's Crosby Estates, a little over a mile. And then if you go southwest down Crosby Dayton Road, just underneath a mile will be Crosby Elementary. And then if you go straight south, just down, draw a line straight down from that red dot, and then slightly to the right is a mobile home park. So not well populated in that sort of mile radius that they have now issued a shelter in place for, which hopefully is good news. But obviously, as you look farther to the left on the screen or to the west here, you see some heavy populations as you get past 2100 there. But that gives you a good sort of overview snapshot with a map of the location and the immediate residential areas near the KMCO plant there. And on the small inset screen, of course, is a live picture from Air 11 of the fire continuing to burn. As Reka tells us, we've just learned that it was a warehouse.
It was a warehouse on the facility, yeah, and something inside exploded and has caused this massive fire that's happening right now that firefighters are trying to get a handle on.
It looks like there are 2 spots burning. As you look at that.
Yeah, and that's actually something very early on that a lot of our viewers even pointed out, because we were trying to get, different vantage point from Air 11. And you're right, it looks like 2 spots. It looks like when you pull back, one giant black plume of smoke, but yes, 2 areas. You can still see the flames coming out of that. Right now it looks like we have been told by sources, fire sources, that 1 person has died as a result of this explosion, and that 2 people were hurt and are being treated right now. We know that Life Flight has been flying in and out of the scene, trying to get those injured back to the hospital, to the medical center, but fire sources apparently telling us that 1 person has died.
What is unclear, however, is just a few minutes ago we heard from the fire marshal's office that 1 person was unaccounted for. So we're obviously going to be efforting some more clarity on whether that unaccounted for person is now been found as the person deceased, or whether that's another employee altogether. We were talking earlier about 180 full-time employees work at this facility in Crosby. That's according to the company's website. We obviously don't know if all 180 were there this morning. We also know the plant has more than 600 tanks and 28 reactors, along with various rail storage spots for a variety of chemicals, including glycol and antifreeze and brake fluid. It's in the business of custom toll manufacturing, which in simple English means they take raw chemicals, they blend them together with various manufacturing processes, and create other products for chemical companies. So they're more of a third-party manufacturer.
Jeremy, you were talking about the violations against a company. It's common for these companies to have violations as they're inspected, it's not. I wish to say it's not uncommon, but just initially, and it may be too early to ask, what you've seen so far, does it seem like this company has several problems? Is it an issue, or does it seem pretty standard? It's like a typical amount.
Well, perspective, and this is from our producers and researchers, TCQ, state regulators, have flagged Chemco 10 times at this Crosby plant since 1995, $140,000 roughly in fines, the biggest of which and the most recent of which was a 2013 fine for $35,000 where they emitted carbon monoxide emissions at rates that exceeded air quality laws. The perspective, no, that is not an inordinate amount of fines. I will tell you, on the workplace safety side of life, we talked earlier about OSHA and violations there. That is significant. Over when you look past 10 years, there were 65 serious violations that OSHA, federal safety regulators, workplace safety regulators, cited this company, and they were fined $250,000 in just a 3-year period. Initially, some of those fines including not having proper respiratory protections for workers, and safety of highly hazardous chemicals and various emergency plans. So we'll continue to learn more about that, but that's at least an initial snapshot that no, this company has not had a clean bill of health in terms of its compliance history when it comes to following air and quality laws and when it comes to following workplace safety measures.
And we should now pass along, we are hearing that Channelview ISD has added its schools to the shelter in place.
So now that's 3.
And also Rhodes, a fine arts school in Channelview. So that's an individual campus.
Yeah, and
but
2
3
individual
districts.
campuses in Channelview. I want to make that clarification. And then 2 entire school districts, Crosby and Sheldon ISD.
And we've got Crosby and Huffman fire departments, both, I believe, volunteer fire departments on the scene, handling the situation. And one of the things that is a little bit different, at least that kind of caught your eye if you are looking at that live Air 11 picture, you can see firefighters on the ground, and they are manning hoses on the ground, pouring water out of a hose. It looks like they're trying to maybe keep some surrounding areas cool to keep the fire from spreading. But so they are, the water, presumably the water we've seen streaming onto this, are coming from handheld hoses. I haven't seen anything coming off of a, like a big truck, which we do see sometimes. So they are manning the fire there.
And it appears there are some firefighting systems in place inside the facility. If you take a closer look, almost like our version of a sprinkler system inside a business, there are, hoses coming from the top. So you can assume that in a plant like this, they have put safety measures in place to possibly, fight a potential fire. But that looks to be, of course, in addition to the trucks that are on the scene spraying water into there. Sherman, I don't know if you've seen any foam. We've become very familiar with foam as a firefighting tool in recent weeks with the ITC fire in Deer Park, and just the amount that had to be poured on to basically suffocate the fire. But right now, it looks like only water is being used, at least from what I can see so far.
Yeah, coming out of hoses anyways, that's what it looks like from our vantage point. And this is the larger of the fires. It's charred in between the 2 areas that look like they're actively burning right now. So, maybe something started in the middle and those are the edges of the larger fire. But to the far left of your screen, you can kind of see it's disappearing now, that other actively burning area. And firefighters on the ground there from Huffman and from Crosby pouring water onto this, a warehouse. And some of those closer shots, you can see, how dramatic the devastation is there. Just crumpled metal, architecture and debris just sort of folded up onto itself.
Crumbling into itself, yeah.
And the sad news now is that we do have 1 confirmed fatality here. Our last understanding is that there were 3 injured and 1 unaccounted for, but we're trying to settle, as to whether or not those are all different people or we may have some overlap here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fire source that indicated to us that 1 person has died as a result of his or her injuries. But again, we're working to double confirm everything. And of course, there's apparently 1 person unaccounted for and 2 people injured. I'm sorry.
Quite an explosion, though. It bears repeating when this went down about 10:45 or so this morning, so we're approaching 2 hours. Residents, we heard Janelle Boudreau talk to a nearby resident who said his entire home shook, and then we heard social media reports from people feeling their homes vibrating and feeling the impact minutes away and miles away. So whatever it is that did explode certainly packed quite a punch as it was felt long and far.
All right.
So
our Adam Bennett is in that area.
And he's live at the command post off of Highway 90. And of course, folks have set up a couple miles away. Adam, are you there?
Yeah, we're here. So this is Highway 90 in Runneberg. Just saw an ambulance go by. Not sure if that was involved with the fire or not, but this is where the deputies have set up their command post. It was about a mile down the street at Krennic. They've since moved it up. So where we are, we're roughly a mile or so away from the fire, but we are upwind. We're not facing it, and we haven't noticed any kind of difficulties with air quality or anything like that as far as breathing symptoms where we are right now. What these deputies are doing is they are redirecting traffic around Highway 90 here. They've kind of closed off the on-ramps here. They're keeping people from going down Runneberg here, and they've set up a barrier as well. This Valero is basically the makeshift command post. We're waiting on word as to when there's going to be an official update, but we do know that Sheriff Ed Gonzalez and his team are here. They tweeted that out a short time ago. They say they're here helping with perimeter control and also dealing with what they still call a very active scene. Now, also here as well is the fire marshal's office. They tell us that they will be taking the lead on this investigation, but again, at this point, they have not announced any kind of a press conference, but if there is one, and surely there will be at some point, this is where it will be. Over the last, say, 5 minutes or so that we've been here, we've seen a lot of people coming up to this parking lot, some people getting out of their cars, taking pictures, looking down the road. Just kind of from our vantage point here, the plume of smoke seems to have dissipated a little bit from when we were first driving up. As we were making our way down Highway 90, coming in from Houston, you could see it for miles and miles and miles, but it still looks like it's still pretty strong. There's still definitely some activity. This fire still looks to be going in some capacity off of the distance. Again, that's about a mile or so. So we're going to walk around and see if we might be able to find some people to talk to. A couple guys going into the store here. We haven't seen, though, at this point, we haven't actually seen the sheriff here on site. He's busy, no doubt, getting information about what's going on. We're still waiting to hear what exactly is burning, specifics on the air quality, and just what people need to know with regards to the different shelter in places that have been issued and other information that people living around here need to know. So we'll continue to try to gather that here at the scene and see if in a minute or so we can talk to some folks and see what they've been hearing, what they've been seeing, and what they've been feeling, what they're thinking as well. But for now, we'll send it back to you.
Very much, Adam. And yeah, as we're looking at that live picture from Air 11, something is still clearly burning, even though thankfully it seems like the smoke is not as intense as it was. We should also note that the city of Houston is tweeting out that it is sending 2 foam trucks to help with suppressing the chemical storage fire in Crosby. Houston also sending some air monitors and in the last fire over at Deer Park. So I don't know if those foam trucks have yet arrived, but certainly we have been trying to keep an eye out for that.
This is some pretty significant news. We've been looking at this company's past record in terms of complying with air and quality, water and air quality laws. Chemco was criminally convicted of 2 counts of violating the Clean Air Act recently, just in 2016. That's according to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality as well as the EPA. And it was ordered to pay part of a $3.3 million fine, as well as $200,000 in community service payments to a environmental enforcement group. The case all stemmed from the company failing to monitor leaks of ground level ozone, meaning smog, which was producing air pollutants at their Crosby facility that you're seeing on fire as we speak. And that occurred over a 4-year period. So we talked about, Sherman, you asked me, put some context in perspective. No, once fines get into the millions, obviously that's a whole other level than $150,000 over the course of 15 or 20 years. And so that's pretty significant. And again, our producers are continually to look at the past history of compliance with our air and water quality laws. That is not to say that there was any negligence on the part that led to this fire. We just don't know. It's way too early. But as we did with the ITC fire in Deer Park, it is important to go back and look at a company's track record. Were they good corporate neighbors? Were they good in terms of complying with air and water quality laws? A $3.3 million fine, again, levied against this company by state and federal environmental regulators just 3 years ago for violating the laws of the Clean Air Act. So wanted to share that with you.
That's got to be unsettling for many reasons for those area residents, in part also, as some of the folks have mentioned, because of the Arkema explosion now just about 2 years ago. Thanks to Harvey, they are sadly too familiar with sheltering in place, not being allowed back into their neighborhoods because of chemical fires. And yeah, that obviously was a different situation, but for the folks living there.
And the fatigue and the uncertainty of all of this, especially what unfolded at the ITC fire. We're going to go back now to Adam Bennett, who is speaking with someone on the ground. Adam?
Yeah, so we're here with Justin. Justin, you're telling me you actually work at the plant that's on fire.
Yes, sir.
Just walk me through where you were in the plant and what happened this morning.
We were actually evacuating at the time. The operators told us that it was time to leave, but I mean, no alarm was sounded. We were just kind of walking away because, you know, we just assumed it was some kind of release. And then as we were, it actually ignited and the tank actually exploded. And then it was just, everybody, it was disorganized. There was just kind of a mad dash to the exits. That
Exploded after they first told you guys to evacuate.
seconds, like probably 30 seconds to a minute, maybe.
And was it like an announcement that was made on the loudspeaker, or how was that given?
No, it was just an operator that told us. And he was nonchalant about it. He just told us, like, oh, you know, now might be a good time to leave. So we evacuated promptly.
And how far away were you from the tanks when that happened?
We were a few hundred feet, but some of my other members of my crew were much closer. They were a little over 100 feet. They're pretty shaken up about it. They're ready to just go ahead and take off.
And what was inside of those tanks?
I'm not positive. It could be various chemicals. I mean, honestly, they don't really tell us what's inside the tanks. But it was definitely, it appeared to be extremely flammable and possibly explosive because it ignited so quickly.
And typically, you were saying that it could be a wide variety of chemicals that are stored in those tanks. What kinds of things does the plant normally store?
Again, they don't really tell us much, but I know it's various reactions, various chemicals. I know they have caustic, sulfur, benzene. I don't know if they have benzene, but I'm pretty sure. Those are just all kinds of things.
When you heard that explosion, felt that explosion, what was that like, and what was going through your head?
It was terrifying. It was definitely terrifying because I don't know. It's always a known danger, but you never actually expect it to happen.
You said you've worked there for about 2 years, right?
Going on 2 years, yes, sir.
And anything like this, close to this, ever happened?
Nothing close to this, no.
And so once that explosion happens, you guys start running. What happens next?
We try to exit through the gates, but of course it's a plant, they're all locked, so we actually ended up having to basically crawl underneath the fence to actually leave because everything's completely locked down. But then it was just basically a mad dash to our superiors until you get their head count and make sure everybody's accounted for.
Were you able to get to your vehicles, or you just came here on foot?
They did let us go back and get our vehicles. I guess everybody could actually go home, but that was
All right, it sounds like you were just listening to Adam Bennett speak to a person who says he is an employee at the Chemco plant. He described kind of what happened in the moments just before this explosion. He said they were told that there was some sort of chemical release and they were told to evacuate. So he said while everyone was walking out, seconds later, he says between 30 seconds to a minute later, there was that explosion that was heard and felt miles away. He says that he and other employees were just a few hundred feet from the area where this explosion happened, and from what we have learned over the last few hours, it stemmed from chemicals inside a warehouse at the Chemco facility. He was not sure what exactly exploded or ignited, but he says, you know, the plant has plastic and sulfur and benzene and other chemicals obviously there.
Yeah, and this employee saying that he thought it was a tank that exploded, so it'd be interesting to see if we can get some clarification. Having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Are we efforting that interview back with Adam and Justin? Just checking in with our producers. Are we trying to see if we can reestablish that interview? Hello? Looks like we are not able to get back to him right away. So that was interesting, saying that Justin, the young man Adam was speaking to, saying that he believed that it was actually a tank. And because of the security around a chemical facility, the gates, he said, were locked. And so that becomes a two-way street, right? You want to keep people out that shouldn't be coming in, but it also can make it difficult for people trying to exit quickly in an emergency. So the young man saying that they actually had to climb underneath a fence to get out of the facility once they were told to leave.
And once they got out, he said they just made a mad dash for their higher-ups to make sure everyone was accounted for, because as we're talking about this, they're from what we understand, still one person unaccounted for.
That's the last we heard.
That's the last we've heard. So the numbers are kind of going back and forth. We know that 2 people are injured at last check. 1 person is confirmed dead and 1 person unaccounted for. But again, these numbers can and could keep changing as the hours go on. But that is sort of the first-hand account we've heard of what happened moments leading up and after the explosion. So, of course, scary moments there for employees, and glad that man was able to get out safely. Adam Bennett, of course, is in that staging area, the command post, which is off of Highway 90 near Krennic. He did say it's at a Valero gas station there. He said that so far they are not in the path of that smoke. It is not heading their direction. So right now, no difficulties with air quality. But you know, officials are keeping people far back and making sure they're out of harm's way as they continue to battle those flames. Right now, we've seen a lot of water being put on that fire, but Houston sending 2 foam trucks to help, again, suffocate that fire. Basically, what we saw on the ITC fire in Deer Park was just get that foam on there, and that will sort of alleviate the issue with the smoke going up in the air. The good news here is it looks like a column. It is going straight up, and of course, the farther away it is from the ground, you know, it'll impact people less. But we don't know what is burning, and we don't know what is in the air. TCEQ has dispatched emergency personnel to the area. They're going to be doing an initial assessment with their mobile air monitors to see what exactly is burning here and if it's an issue for folks living in the area. In the meantime, the Harris County Sheriff's Office has offered a shelter in place for all residents within a 1-mile radius of the Chemco chemical plant. Again, that just happening in the last half hour or so. But all of this started around 10:45 this morning, and we're now approaching 2 hours as we watch this fire and chemical explosion that's happening at the Chemco plant in Crosby that has also led to a shelter in place for at least 2 school districts in the area, Crosby and Sheldon ISD, as well as 2 schools in Channelview, including Rhodes School as well. So if you're just joining us now, again, approaching 2 hours that we've been following this chemical fire in Crosby.
And of course, you know, parents very concerned with those shelters in place because they can't get to their kids. Our Janelle Bluta is live in the neighborhood. I understand you've got a parent with you, Janelle?
That's right, Sherman. So actually, we're outside of one of the Crosby kindergarten pre-K schools right here, and you can see, Derek, I don't know if you can show them, the fires right over our shoulder here. So we are pretty close, probably within a mile of it, and I don't know if you can show the cars. There's a long line of cars here of people trying to pick up their kids, and what's happening is that shelter in place, they're not letting the kids go. They're not opening the doors at all. The AC units are shut off and the kids are staying inside. And I have Dolores here with me. She's been waiting to pick up her daughter since around, or her granddaughter since around 11, right? Tell me a little bit about your morning.
Yeah, I left the house about 10 to 11. Right before I left the house, I heard the noise. I wasn't sure what it was. It sounded like a car wreck maybe. The house shook a little bit. And so I said, I'm going to hurry up and leave before I run into, you know, emergency vehicles. So, but it was too late. I saw the smoke and fire trucks and, you know, I got here, but they're not letting them out.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure because, I mean, we're out here, you know, so I don't see why they don't just let them come out.
And instead, you're kind of having to sit out here and wait in your car.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you concerned about being out here?
A little bit, not too much.
How do you think Valerie, she's 4, how do you think she's doing right now?
I don't know. I hope she's doing okay. I hope, you know, she doesn't realize that they're not letting them out, you know.
Have you ever had anything like this happen before?
No.
And you live pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what happens next? You just kind of wait?
I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should go home and come back or keep waiting. You know, I just don't know.
Yeah.
We did just get a call saying that it's going to continue, the shelter in place, so, you know.
Okay, well, we hope that you get her pretty soon.
Me too.
Okay, and we'll check back in with you in a little bit, see how long this takes. So what I was talking to a Crosby ISD official earlier, and they said that, 8 schools are now currently on shelter in place. We have long lines of parents here trying to pick up their kids. The pre-K kids were supposed to be let out right around 11:20. Some of the parents are saying, they live further away from this, so they would rather just get their kids and take them further away. However, they're not able to get them inside the classroom. They've shut the doors, and they're not letting anyone in or out at this moment. While that shelter in place continues, and as you just heard Dolores say that she's heard that it's not going to go on even longer. So there you go, you see that there's the smoke right there right next to the school. So we're going to stay out here, guys, kind of monitor what's happening with the schools here, and we can bring you guys an update. Hopefully they'll let some of the kids out pretty soon, but we'll let you guys know.
Hey, Janelle, I'm just curious. I know you were talking to Dolores and some of the other parents. Did any of them indicate whether they felt the blast when it happened?
Yes, actually, all of them have told me that they felt it initially when it first happened, and then they came here to pick up their kids, and then that's whenever they weren't allowed to take them home with them. But yes, they have all told me that they did hear and feel it when it happened right around 10:30, 10:45 this morning.
All right. Well, hopefully the little kids, the kindergartners, the pre-Kers are just getting an extra round of juice and crackers right now, and aren't aware of what's happening outside. And that the parents will be able to get their kids soon.
Absolutely, and that's really what the school districts have been telling folks, please don't come to the school just yet. We haven't figured it out, but of course as a parent, they are concerned, and they just want to find out what's happening with their kids. In the meantime, Cheetah Craft has been tracking the wind direction in the area and just talking about conditions up there. Cheetah, what's the latest?
Okay, well, across the area, we're really tracking calm winds out of the northeast all morning long. Really, winds have been very steady, staying just basically about the same, less than 5 miles per hour. So again, really calm conditions. So calm winds at the surface, calm winds aloft with northeast winds. It'll barely try to push some of that smoke towards the southwest region. So I do want you to keep in mind portions of central and southwestern Harris County may be impacted by some of that smoke. You may start to see that traveling across the area. So that would travel out of the northeast towards the southwest region. Even as we head into our evening hours, winds remain under about 10 miles per hour. It's not until our overnight hours where we get a very big wind shift. Pretty much throughout the day Wednesday, tomorrow, we're expecting southeasterly winds, and they're going to continue to pick up. What that means for you, well, that will be a big directional change as far as the smoke goes, but that's also going to be higher humidity with added cloud cover for our Wednesday. That would also impact it. Now today, so we don't have that cap or that inversion, we're looking at most of this mixing at the surface levels between about 2,400 to about 4,400 feet. Now, some of that smoke could be traveling as high as about 5,000 to 7,000 feet. So putting that in perspective, you're going to be able to see the smoke from really miles and miles and miles away because of just how high it's traveling in the atmosphere. So when you look across town and you see some of that smoke lift, some of that is gradually going to work west-southwest of Crosby. But I just want you to also keep in mind, today we already were under an air quality alert, an ozone watch. That means higher ozone particles in the atmosphere because of the clear skies and calm winds. So we were already looking at moderate levels with the air quality. This is just obviously going to intensify the situation. If you have asthma, emphysema, if you're a little more sensitive to those added particles, you want to keep it inside. And of course, the shelter in place is a completely different story. If we get an update from TCEQ or any of the air quality levels, of course, we'll let you know. I have not seen any changes here. We're still looking at moderate levels across the entire area, but that was already issued earlier this morning. That had nothing to do with the additional smoke. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Cheetah. You were talking, of course, about the wind and the air, the situation with the air, and this time lapse of the explosion maybe demonstrates that a little bit from a distance. You can see it across the water there, but it sort of just, kind of just sparks straight up, and then when it gets to a much higher elevation, then you can see it sort of wafting across.
And that's good because you don't want that smoke near the ground, which is what we saw with the last fire. Are we going to go to Adam right now? Is he ready? All right. Before we go to Adam Bennett, it looks like he's speaking to folks on the ground. Okay. All right. He's in a staging area there. Adam, who are you speaking with now?
Okay, guys, so we are with Ben. Ben, you were on Justin's crew, who we just spoke with a minute ago, inside the plant that's on fire. Just kind of walk me through where you were and what happened.
Well, we were out in the fabrication yard. Next thing you know, my foreman, you know, started getting everybody together because there was something over the radios. Huh? Oh, yeah. And there was something going on, and he just decided to round up everybody. Next thing you know, is a huge explosion, and you just saw people walking out, you know, running out the gate. So at that point, I mean, we were just waiting. I mean, we have a procedure, you know, like every other plant and every other contractor, of where to go, you know, when there is an explosion.
The city or the school district?
Sounds like we're standing by Adam Bennett, of course, talking to employees who evacuated from the Chemco plant in the area. And we're taking a live look right now. We keep telling you that schools in place have been told to shelter in place, and that the neighborhood within a 1 mile radius, of course, is being asked to shelter in place. So what does that even mean? Well, we want to talk to you about what you would have to do if you were told to shelter in place. And essentially, first thing is to bring everyone inside. Bring your family members, bring your pets inside, lock your doors, close your windows, air vents and fireplace dampers. Turn all of those off. We know that the schools in the area, the districts in the area have been told to turn off their HVAC. And it sounds like we're heading back to Adam.
I think Adam is reestablished.
We didn't feel nothing. We were about half a mile.
And how far away were you at that point from that explosion?
Probably like less than half a mile. I mean, we were inside the actual plant, just you know, at the yard. You know.
Did you have any protective gear on at that point?
Just safety glasses. Nothing out of the ordinary.
But you haven't felt any side effects, health effects, anything like that?
No, nothing at all, man.
Everybody on your crew accounted for?
Yeah, we had a head count right after we exited the plant, and everybody's accounted for.
And I know I asked Justin the same thing, but any idea what was in those tanks that exploded?
Man, to be honest, no, we don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, benzene, who knows? I mean, who knows?
They don't tell you guys?
No, we don't know.
And so you went out through the back gate, the back kind of under the fence too as well?
I mean, it wasn't literally, we didn't crawl underneath the fence. Like I said, we were able to get a Milwaukee grinder and a cordless grinder and just cut that lock perfectly off and just open the gate, and we all walked, the whole crew just walked out. We didn't have to crawl or nothing.
And any kind of communication from the plant with you guys since then about what to do or what's next?
We're just waiting to see what they tell us. I mean, it's going to be pretty sure a couple of days till we actually get back to work. But other than that, we haven't heard anything.
And since you've been out here, you've been feeling okay?
Yeah, 100%.
Ben, we're glad you're okay. Glad everybody on your crew is accounted for. So appreciate you talking to us. Thank you so much, man. Be safe. All right, guys. So yeah, we just heard from two employees that were in the plant at the time of the explosion. They said that they got a warning from their foreman, maybe just a matter of seconds before it happened, and then there was a loud explosion. And they said everybody pretty much just took off from that point. But nobody's really quite sure what was inside the tanks. But at this point, they said they haven't felt any kind of health effects, but they are waiting to just basically see what their next steps are from the supervisors. We'll send it back to you.
All right. Hey, Adam, I don't know if you're aware, but your signal cut in and out a little bit, so we didn't actually, our viewers didn't get to hear everything that I think Ben was telling you. So just to sort of backtrack one or two questions, if you don't mind. We had originally heard that a warehouse was on fire, but is Ben and Justin, were they telling you they think it's a tank or something else that caught fire?
Yeah, that was their understanding, although he said he was a pretty good distance away, maybe a few hundred yards or so by the time that explosion happened. So he said he basically heard the explosion and just took off running from that point. So we can check back and certainly circle back around just to make sure, but that's what we're hearing at this point.
And was he able to share any information? We understand there is one fatality, maybe somebody still missing, and a couple of 2 or 3 injuries. Was he able to share anything about that? Was he, does he know who may have been hurt?
So I don't think so. Big picture, he wasn't really sure about that. We were just talking mainly about his crew and the people he was with, and he said that everybody that was in his section of the plant was accounted for. But as far as everybody else, he wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's such a chaotic situation for them to get out, and we understand difficult for some of them to get out of the facility and get to safety. So a lot of questions remain. But thank you so much, Adam, for the very latest. And again, good to see those two folks that you interviewed, the employees, are safe and sound. Again,
I was just thinking, very interesting, sort of different. The first fellow he talked to, they said they had to climb underneath the fence to get out.
Because it was locked.
Right,
Yeah.
and this crew, they had, you know, apparently bolt cutters or something. They said they just cut the lock clean off the gate.
Yeah.
And then everybody walked out a gate.
Absolutely. And this is video from earlier today. This is aerial video that was shot by Air 11 earlier today. We want to make that very clear. This is from several minutes ago. But the situation is still happening right now. The fires are still going, and firefighters are working to get those flames out. We talked a little bit, we heard from Adam when we spoke to the two employees that one of them said one of the fires was from a tank, and that we were told by officials earlier that it was a storage facility. Now, we've seen two separate fires burning, so there's a good chance that one could have sparked from a storage facility, the other from a storage warehouse, and the other from a tank. So again, don't quite know the sources. We haven't gotten official word from Chemco on as to how this fire started, but what we have heard from those two employees is that they didn't have a lot of time to evacuate. The explosion happened seconds after they got a warning from a foreman or smelled some chemical, one of them claiming smelling a chemical in the air, so there was not a lot of time to escape. That is the other thing that we've learned from employees who have evacuated from the area. So far, one person confirmed dead as a result of this explosion. 2 people have been hurt, and don't know the extent of their injuries, but we know that from scanner traffic earlier on that Jeremy Rogalski from our investigative team told us the person likely suffered from burns, and we know that Life Flight was there on the scene, so this was a critical situation to get folks to the medical center as soon as possible. There's still a shelter in place from the Harris County Sheriff's Office offering that shelter in place for all residents within a 1-mile radius of the Chemco chemical plant. When we look at this map and we zoomed in a little bit, Sherman, and you noted earlier, there's not too many homes in the area in that immediate facility.
Yeah.
But there are some schools in the area, and parents are concerned about that. And of course, it might be stretching beyond that 1-mile radius because we just don't know what is burning and what is in that smoke.
We have a tweet, I think, from the Harris County Office of Emergency Management describing what to do if you are living in a shelter-in-place or maybe working in a nearby facility that would be within the 1-mile radius. I don't know if we can bring that up so folks can take a quick look as to, okay, I guess we have some bullets maybe from the top of the screen if we can take a quick look at that. But you were saying earlier, you know, that you want to close the doors.
You want to first you want to bring everyone inside.
Sure.
So bring your family, bring your pets inside as well. Don't forget your dog outside. You want to lock your doors and close your windows, air vents, and fireplace dampers. And that is key because also they suggest turning off your fans and air conditioning and forced air heating systems. We know that the 2 school districts there that are sheltering in place have done that, turned off their HVAC units because you don't want to circulate any potentially bad, harmful, hazardous air into the school. Go into an interior room that has few windows if that is possible. And of course, you know, be prepared to improvise and use what you have on hand. If you can seal any gaps that you may have between the doors, you want to create a barrier basically between yourself inside and any sort of exterior contamination. So that is also key.
In some families, back in the Deer Park situation a few weeks ago, you know, put wet towels at the bottom of their doors. If, like in our first house, there's a good gap at the bottom of those doors. It can be a little drafty sometimes. That's probably wise as well. And you're looking at a video taken a little bit earlier of the fire. And man, boy, is that, those are some dramatic images of the flames and the smoke and, you know, the melted steel around the fire. The school districts that are sheltering in place now are
Sheldon ISD, Crosby ISD, and there were 2 more schools that were within Channelview ISD, Rhodes School, and then a second school, and unfortunately I am having trouble recalling the second Channelview ISD school that is sheltering in place, but obviously it's one in that area. And it sounds like the shelter in place is going to remain for now. I know a lot of parents are obviously concerned. We saw Janelle Bluda speaking to parents who are coming to pick up their kids from pre-K, which is released right about now, but they are not letting kids out of schools in the area just yet. In the meantime, when we see this big thick plume of smoke, we're so worried about, of course, the air quality and wind direction. Cheetah Craft has been tracking all of this. Cheetah, let's go back to you.
You know, you're exactly right. For so many of us, if you're just watching this on TV, if you're just trying to get caught up on exactly what's going on, it can be extremely alarming. You see that big cloud of smoke. If you just looked out your window and this is what you saw and now you're trying to get some information, this is what we can tell you at this point. Most of that smoke is traveling from the northeast region. Now, this is in Crosby and it's heading towards this west-southwest portion of Harris County. So you're going to see that across the lower levels of the atmosphere. We're talking between about 2,500 to 4,500 feet. Could be traveling as high as about 5,000 to 7,000 feet because we are dealing with clear skies and mostly calm winds. So you're not getting a big shift or a big push with these winds, but some light mixing at the lower levels of the atmosphere. Let me show you the wind direction. If you're just catching up with us here, let me give you a different perspective so you can kind of see where we're talking about from Crosby. Again, most of the winds out of the northeast pushing most of that smoke between about 2,500 to 4,500 feet towards more of the southwest region of Harris County. So far throughout the day, earlier this morning, an air quality alert was already issued. That's because with clear skies and calm winds, you naturally see added ozone particles. You naturally see that because we don't get a lot of mixing with these calm winds. You add additional smoke in there, we could start to see this air quality rise. At this point, all we've heard is moderate levels, and that would impact more of our sensitive groups. So that category that includes asthma, emphysema, any respiratory illness. If I'm talking to you, you want to keep it inside as well. And because we are talking about temperatures that are comfortable, turn off the air conditioning if you can. Limit any circulation of outside air that could potentially impact you or your family. Now, the shelter in place is really only for about a mile radius of where you see the smoke coming up from the explosion. But really, I'm talking to any residents here from Harris, Brazoria, or Galveston County, guys, just because we are dealing with an air quality alert already.
Thank you very much, Cheetah. And if you are just joining us, we have been monitoring a breaking news situation out of Northeast Harris County. This is going to be in Crosby. You're looking at Air 11 video of a chemical plant fire at the Chemco plant. This is going to be on Ramsey Road. A shelter in place has been issued for 1 mile, a radius around that facility. We understand there's been 1 fatality and at least 3 injuries. There has also been word that 1 person has been unaccounted for. We're trying to figure out if that may be the person who died in this fire. Not clear yet. All of this happened about 10:30 this morning. A huge explosion. Residents could feel the blast from several miles away. A lot of parents were concerned. They actually drove to their kids' school. They've been waiting in cars outside of their children's campuses, hoping to pick up their kids, but that shelter in place has also been issued for Sheldon, for schools over in the Huffman area and the Crosby area. So that has been of concern, as well as 2 campuses in Channelview. I'm sorry, that's going to be Dayton ISD as well as 2 campuses in Channelview, and some other areas as well have had some shelter in place along with Sheldon and Crosby. So we've got a couple of school districts there, and you can look at the dramatic images there from Air 11. Lynn Cannon joining us now.
Yeah, so this has been going on now for about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours plus that we first got word about this explosion. Again, as Sherman just said, there is 1 fatality. There are at least a couple of other people injured, and 2 people were life flighted, we are told, out of this facility, this Chemco chemical plant. And so it reminds us of just how inherently risky these plants can be. This is the 2nd time in 2 weeks we have seen this kind of event happen. Of course, we just spent more than a week talking about the ITC facility in Deer Park. Fortunately there were no fatalities, but here we've got 1 fatality, and now all the questions are about what's in the air, what exactly is burning, and what problems will it pose for the community. It's early. We're still trying to sort that out. I'm sure Harris County officials are going to be all over this because they've just done the drill. And TCEQ and everybody will be checking into this to monitor air quality, etc.
Yeah, in fact, TCEQ does have a team en route now. Don't know yet if they've arrived to assess the situation. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez also on the scene. They have a staging area just outside the plant. He has been actively tweeting from the scene, and this is the latest tweet. He says, Crosby plant fire, preliminary information. Isobutylene initially started fire and is burning. First responders trying to contain the fire. 1 confirmed deceased at the scene. 2 have been life-flighted in unknown condition. So that has been sort of, in terms of the injuries and the fatalities, consistent with what we have been hearing, but we do now have a chemical. We know what is burning now, and we'll be taking a look at what that is. This is a chemical plant fire. And our Adam Bennett has been at that staging area. He's actually been able to speak to 2 employees who were at the plant on the facility site when that blast happened. Let's take a listen at that interview.
You hear anything or see anything this morning?
Yeah, we were on site.
Actually at the plant?
Yeah, we were actually at the plant. There was somewhat of an evacuation, but nothing was really said. There was no alarms that went off, and I see all the water kick on from like the control units, and it just ignited. The tank fucking blew. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to do that.
What was in that tank?
I have no idea. Nothing was said to us about it.
What kind of chemicals are normally stored at that site?
It's really like a storage facility, so it can be anything. Like it can be anything. Benzene, gasoline, brake fluid. Brake fluid isn't flammable, but it could be anything. Caustic, sulfur.
And where were you inside the plant when everything happened?
Most of us were walking towards the parking lot, but honestly, we were all right there. So it's very close. Like these guys were only a little over 100 feet away at the time, but there's a lot going on.
Having a little bit of trouble there, some technical difficulties. Our signals freezing from time to time with the interviews. Those, by the way, work off of cell phone signals, so as you can imagine, probably a lot of activity going on right now in that immediate area. This is video from a little bit earlier of the Chemco plant fire, and as we had been noting, there seemed to be 2 sources of the fire, at least most recently we have seen. So can't tell if there was one large initial fire and then, the flames kind of were beaten down in the middle, or if there were 2 separate ignition points. But that was Justin, an employee of Chemco, who was on site at the facility when Adam was interviewing him, and he had been telling us that was kind of interesting because it is a chemical plant, because there are tremendous security concerns, all the gates are locked, and so when they were told to evacuate, people were running out, at least in Justin's group, and they weren't able to get out because the gates were locked. They actually had to climb underneath the fencing to get out, which they did. Another individual that Adam had interviewed, they looked like maybe more of a work crew of some sort. They actually had tools with them, so they cut the lock off of the gate, just severed it clean off, opened the gate, and then walked out. We also, of course, have live pictures from around the facility. You can look at this image. This may be Janelle Bluta's camera. She is been at a nearby kindergarten under shelter in place. Those kids were supposed to actually be released.
Not today.
Yeah, they were supposed to be released before the noon hour, if I remember correctly, and there is a long line of worried moms and dads and grandparents and aunts and uncles, many of whom felt the blast when it occurred around 10:30 in the morning, and got in line to try and pick up their child, but have been unable to do so.
4 ISDs are now been told to shelter in place indefinitely until we figure out how they're doing in terms of fighting the fire. We heard the Harris County Sheriff Gonzalez mention what was burning. Ibutylene is what he called it, correct?
I think it was, isobutylene?
Isobutylene.
I believe.
Okay, so isobutylene, as I go check it out, it is a colorless, flammable gas. Now, it doesn't indicate whether it is toxic, but it is a colorless, odorless, a hydrocarbon of industrial significance is how it is described. And not unusual, I'm sure, for a plant like this, but that is exactly what is burning. We will have to get an expert to kind of fill us in a little bit more on what the risk could be for this type of chemical that is burning. We heard Cheetah earlier talk about the fact that the weather is cooperating, because with no winds, very few winds, I should say, and the smoke continuing to rise, and we noticed this at Deer Park at that fire, that as long as the smoke is rising and there isn't rain to bring it down, then it's better in terms of the residents in the area, in terms of air quality. We remember we talked at Deer Park about, well, today it's going to be 4,000 feet or 5,000 feet, and at night it could drop because of the change at night.
Moisture in the atmosphere.
Exactly.
And whatnot, yeah.
Could drop to 500 or 600 feet. So here we're going through the very same drill, and we'll see exactly. And then, of course, we later learned, you know, we were dealing with benzene. In this case, the exact nature, we're saying isobutylene, but the risk, is it a carcinogen? Is it toxic? We don't know. We have to check that out.
Right. In the meantime, our Janelle Bluda, she has actually moved from her location at the kindergarten. I think she's gone a little bit further back. Yeah. Janelle, what can you update us with?
Hey guys, yeah. So we're probably about 3 miles now away from that fire, so we're definitely outside of that shelter-in-place zone. This is what we're looking at here. You can see the smoke from what we were looking at out here earlier. It's a lot less smoke than we saw, but we have seen it kind of go away, kind of come back. It's drifted back and forth, so clearly still burning. We're not sure exactly to what extent. From where we can see right now, but it's a lot quieter out here than we were. This is where we first came earlier. I don't know if you guys remember, there was cars going back and forth, lots of people stopping to take pictures. A lot quieter out here now. So we were closer earlier. We were up near the fire, probably less than half a mile away. When you are closer to it, you can smell a burning chemical, not like the ITC fire. The ITC fire, you could definitely tell it was gasoline. Out here, though, it's a chemical, and it's hard to tell exactly what it is, but you can smell it, and you can feel that it's in the air. And so a lot of first responders were wearing masks. A lot of them weren't. They said they weren't concerned. That's what they told me. When we were up closer to the fire, we saw some family members of people who work at the plant. You know, they were here waiting to hear from those family members. People just waiting around hoping to get some news of what's happening right now on site. But like I said, we have moved further back. This is where we are right now, just a little bit south of the fire. But you can see the smoke is now drifting off. It looks a lot less right now, but like I've said, it's been coming back and forth. Where we are right now, we don't smell any type of burning chemical. It feels normal out here, so we're probably going to stay here for a little while. Like I said, we were closer, a lot closer, and we moved out here just for, you know, our own safety. We know a lot of people out here have just left the area. But a lot of people are staying, and those people who were waiting for their kids, they were sitting out in the car. That was about a mile from the site as well. So waiting for their kids to be released. I asked them if they were concerned. They said yes. A lot of people concerned about what they're breathing. But right now, where we are right now, we feel okay.
All right, that is, of course, safety first, as they always say, and rightfully so. And of course, the kids at the kindergarten and these 4 school districts all sheltering in place. We're talking about Dayton, Channelview, Sheldon, all of those school districts. There is going to be a news conference, we are told, being efforted at 1:30 this afternoon, so just in about 20 minutes or so. It's going to be held, we're told, by the Harris County Fire Marshal. We did speak with Rachel Moreno a little bit earlier when she had just arrived, so they are obviously collecting some information. A lot of questions we have for them, and I'm sure they're working on it as well. As you know, is it just water? Will they be putting anything else, as we saw previously in Deer Park? Is foam going to be put on there? Houston has sent 2 foam trucks to that location to assist if that is what is needed. Obviously, we want to know more about the fatality and the injuries. We've seen Lifeline come and go as well from the scene, transporting individuals. So Sheldon, Crosby, Dayton, and Channelview, those 4 ISDs are now ordering shelters in place for their students, all of their personnel, AC units being turned off, of course, as well as a shelter in place for a 1-mile radius around the Chemco facility.
And as you can see, 10:06 is what we're now saying. So it's been 3 hours, a little over 3.5 hours since this has happened. We have a statement we're going to put up. Here we go. This is from John Foley, President and CEO of Kimco. So I'm going to read this thing in its entirety. The CEO of Kimco says there was an incident resulting in an ignition and fire at Kimco in Crosby. He goes on to say, we are deeply saddened to confirm at this time that there have been injuries and one fatality, of course, as we've been reporting. The president of the company says those injured have been transported for medical treatment. Our hearts and prayers go out to the individuals involved, as well as our first responders, employees, and our community. We have activated the company's emergency response team and incident command center. We are working with local first responders to extinguish the fire. We will have another update as additional information becomes available. And he wraps up by saying, again, this is the CEO and president of Kimco Chemical. We apologize for any inconvenience to residents in the vicinity. The well-being of our people, neighbors, and the environment remain our top priorities.
And there we go, a statement there from Chemco as this fire continues to actively burn. We have the Crosby Volunteer Fire Department and the Huffman Volunteer Fire Department battling that blaze, along with Hazmat lending assistance, and the Houston Fire Department sending 2 foam trucks. So those are the crews on the scene currently dealing with this fire. TCEQ has also dispatched a crew there. We presume that they will also be monitoring the air quality there, some of those handheld monitors that have become familiar to us in the last couple of weeks from the Deer Park incident. And they may also be sending that mobile van eventually to drive up and down around the area to take air samples. Air quality, a huge concern. Cheetah Craft has been monitoring the weather conditions, the wind, everything else in that department. Hey, Cheetah.
Hey, well, as you see that big plume of smoke continuing to rise in the atmosphere, I wanted to put this on a map, give you some perspective of where we're talking here, in case wherever you're located. So here's Crosby. You can see 90 here, and then, of course, IAH, the big airport, and here is where the smoke is coming up. So this, when you see that in some of our live pictures, as the smoke travels in the upper levels of the atmosphere, check what happens because we have northeast winds. It picks up that smoke and it continues to push it more west-southwest. Now, winds are extremely calm, and it doesn't matter where you are this afternoon. Winds are less than 10 miles per hour, and in most areas less than 5 miles per hour. But let me zoom on in. Again, the areas that we're watching here, right towards Crosby, where that smoke is coming up, the wind direction is out of the northeast, so this will be pushing some of that smoke towards central and southwest Harris County. With that being said, because winds are really, really calm, it's not going to impact a whole lot. The only change that I'm expecting to happen with our wind direction will be overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. This is Wednesday. Tomorrow morning at 6:30, we'll be tracking a southeast wind, and throughout the day tomorrow, that's when our winds will pick up. Now today, for the remainder of the afternoon and evening, winds should be mostly calm. What this means for how far the smoke will travel in the atmosphere, I'm still suggesting most of this is trying to mix out between about 2,500 to 4,500 feet. To put this in perspective for you, could be traveling as high between about 5,000 to 7,000 feet. So you're going to see this really well away from where the actual explosion happened in Crosby. So I don't want you to be alarmed if you look out your window and you see some of that smoke. We were already today under an air quality alert. The National Weather Service issued that this morning for the afternoon today because we have clear skies and calm winds. We don't get that natural mixing of the added ozone. So already today you are going to see a little bit of a haze. With that being said, the additional smoke and the additional particles in the atmosphere, you're going to see that becoming more intensified. So moderate conditions with our air quality, that means for our sensitive groups, if you have asthma, emphysema, if you have any respiratory illness, you want to stay inside, turn the AC off. It's cool enough, you'll stay cool, to limit any outside circulation inside your home. Guys, keep that in mind. I'm going to continue to watch the air quality levels. Again, they haven't changed so far. If I see any other reports, of course, I'll let you know.
All right, thank you so much, Cheetah. We've got some Snapchat video that our viewers have been sending in of the fire as it, when it first broke out, and you can see, even from a distance away, from backyards, from shopping centers, from roadsides, people driving by or standing outside cannot miss that image up in the sky. folks grabbing their phones to take a couple of pictures and have been good enough to share this with us. Lots of folks from miles away telling us that they felt the blast. You can even see the timestamp on that at 10:57 a.m. and at the bottom they wrote "not again," a reference no doubt to the ITC fire over in Deer Park. But a lot of these images now on social media as well as on Twitter. So if you have been scrolling through your feeds, you have been seeing stuff like this.
Yeah, and we're starting to get a bit of a picture of what it was like for some of the workers. I saw one tweet where they said there was a mad dash for the exits when this happened. And of course, we now know that there is one fatality. We have updated information. If you have children in Sheldon ISD, the district is now telling us it is allowing parents to pick up their kids early. If you have children in Sheldon ISD, where there has been a shelter in place, you can pick up your kids early. I'm assuming there are parents already there ready to do just that. Aside from picking them up early, the district is saying it will be a normal release time. I don't know what time that is, but you would know. And so if you don't pick them up early, then you can pick them up at the normal release time. That is Sheldon ISD. We're still waiting to get more information on what plans are in the other school districts, Dayton, Channelview, that are also having a shelter in place.
Sheldon, yep. You know, if you were in North Houston, you probably saw a second plume of smoke going up, and I don't know if we can get that video queued up for our viewers. Okay, but that was a fiberglass plant that sent
something else.
Yes, a second fire. It went to 3 alarms. Our Brett Buffington saying, you know, telling folks, you know, it's to the north. It's not this fire. It's actually a second one, smaller in nature, but certainly very dramatic for the folks, you know, on the north side of town as well. We are waiting for a press conference now. It's scheduled to start in about 10 minutes with the Harris County Fire Marshal. He will be there to kind of give us an update on whatever they can on the situation here. The Harris County Sheriff, Ed Gonzalez, has also been on the scene. He has been, you know,
he's been sending out, you know, reaching out on social media, explaining. So, you know, since this broke a little over 3 hours ago, there have been no news conferences. We have heard from the president and CEO of the plant, expressing his condolences and saying that, you know, safety is their utmost concern, and they apologize for the inconvenience that this is causing and what is going on for the people in that community. Obviously, people are very upset and very worried. So we've seen a lot of social media push. We, as you mentioned, in about 10 minutes here, we're going to hear a news conference from the Harris County Fire Marshal. Perhaps we'll get an update. We heard from the sheriff say isobutylene is what is burning there. And so maybe we'll get more details about exactly what is burning, the risk that is involved, how the firefighting effort is going. We see a lot of black smoke and still see some flames. As we said, it's been lasting a little over 3 hours, 3.5 hours now. And so we should get all that information here in about 10 minutes.
All right, and we've got an update now. Dayton ISD is not sheltering in place. So that is an update. Not quite clear if that's a clarification or if that's a change, but the bottom line is there is no shelter in place currently for Dayton ISD. You know, our investigative reporters have, of course, also been on this story, checking out the background of the Chemco facility. And one of the things our Jeremy Rogowski was able to share with us a little bit earlier was that they had a 2016 criminal conviction for violating some air quality issues and a fine of over $3 million. Is that correct, Jeremy?
It was, yes, it was Chemco's plant, not only here in Crosby. They also operate a plant, Chemco also operates a plant in Port Arthur, and they were ordered to pay a total of $3.5 million in criminal fines and a $200,000 payment to a environmental watchdog group, an advocacy group. That was on the federal side. We also should mention that there have been some civil cases as well. The Harris County Attorney's Office, the Office of Vince Ryan, has sued this company twice on behalf of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, once in 2008 and once, and the second time, in 2017. I'm looking at the docket on that case. That case is still active as we speak. That was waiting, that is waiting to go to trial. Again, that was for allegedly violating air quality laws. And so, you know, we begin to unravel, Len and Sherman, the enforcement compliance history of this company. To put it in context and perspective, you know, when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of fines over the course of a couple decades, that's one thing. You get into the millions and criminal charges, that takes it to a whole new level. But again, we have state regulatory fines. We have 2 separate lawsuits from the Harris County Attorney's Office. And then we have this that's on the civil side, and now we have these criminal charges. They were levied with more than $3 million in fines.
And when we have the news conference at 1:30, we know it's going to be with the Harris County Fire Marshal's office. We heard a tweet from the president and CEO. I wonder if he will, I don't know if the president and CEO is even here, but I think people would like to hear from him. I think the kind of issues that you've raised in terms of the history would be questions to ask, you know, about the background and what has gone on in the past and what happened here, sir. So, you know, I think those are the questions that are fair to ask.
And not only from an environmental impact level, you also have a workplace and worker safety aspect. And we initially looked at OSHA, the Federal Occupational and Safety Health Administration, for any workplace violations, and we did find they had 65 violations over the course of the past decade, including a $250,000 fine. We're trying to drill down further on exactly what was the nature of those violations, but we did report earlier that it had to do with workers not having proper respiratory protection, not having proper emergency plans on file. And so when you start to add these up and look at the timeline, you know, at least it gives our viewers a picture that this is the company's history, you know, in terms of compliance with state and federal regulating type of authorities.
And let's give you an update. So we do know the school districts with the shelter in place, Sheldon, Crosby, Channelview. There is no shelter in place for Dayton ISD. Also, if you have children in Sheldon ISD, there is an early pickup time. So as soon as you can get there, parents, and you want to get your kids in Sheldon ISD, you can do so, aside from that normal release time. Also, we have learned that the city of Baytown will be conducting air quality tests, I believe. They're saying that as of now, that appears to be no danger and no risk, but I think they're doing it out of an abundance of caution for the people in Baytown.
You know, you brought up an interesting question whether or not there would be a representative from Chemco at this press conference scheduled to start in just about 5 minutes. But over the past 2+ weeks, we have gotten accustomed to seeing an ITC spokesperson and a vice president at daily, you know, sometimes twice daily briefings,
right,
along with the EPA, you know, officials.
Well, these companies, they hire people to speak. So that's maybe what we hear today. We did hear from the head of ITC, but that was by video. So no chance to ask any questions there.
We do have a chance now to ask questions with Richard Mann. He is an executive assistant chief with the Houston Fire Department. I believe he's joining us on the phone now. Can you hear us, Chief Mann? We're hoping to get some perspective from him on how to battle these types of fires. Chief, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. So we understand from Sheriff Gonzalez that it's isobutylene, I don't know if I'm even saying that right, that is burning. What can you tell us about how, you know, first responders would stage, how would they attack something like this?
Well, the good thing is all first responders have what we call emergency response guidebook on every piece of apparatus that we have, and it's a publication that's put out and updated annually, and everybody has one of those. It has every chemical or chemical type in it, and so it really gives us a good guide for some initial evacuation distances, protective gear that we need to have, medical treatment, things like that. So I'm sure they initially consulted with that to give them the general parameters of what they were dealing with and how to approach it on a general basis until they get more specifics.
And have you looked at the video of this? Have you been able to watch it?
Yes,
Richard?
I have seen some.
And so as you look at it, what does experience tell you as it relates to what you are watching?
For these type of fires, I mean, our challenges are basically to find out what product that we have that we're dealing with, and to try and minimize any impact on, environmental impact is a big factor that we consider, as well as the safety of our personnel, obviously. So, and obviously to keep it from getting any enlarging or getting the incident from getting any bigger. So I would assume that at this point, with other tanks, we want to limit the fire to what's already being consumed. Try to keep it from spreading to any additional tanks. I'm sure they're probably trying to cool off the additional tanks that are in the area to keep those from igniting. They're trying to minimize runoffs. They're trying to evaluate what's the greater evil, to let the product burn or to try and put it out with water and create a lot of runoff. So they're evaluating the product for which of those two is the best on the environment.
The city of Houston, Mayor Turner tweeting out a little while ago that 2 foam trucks have been dispatched from Houston to Crosby to assist with this. Do you know if they've arrived and whether foam is a part of the attack strategy?
Yes, they have arrived, and they're evaluating again now what the attack strategy is. I think in my initial reports from our first arriving personnel is they're concentrating on cooling the tanks right now, the adjacent tanks, and then they'll decide on the best strategy, whether it's to use foam to put out the actual fire.
Okay. Are you on scene now?
No, I'm not.
So my understanding is that Huffman and Crosby are the fire departments. They're sort of the lead on this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are they both volunteer fire departments?
I'm unfamiliar. Most of them have usually a paid crew during the day, and they're partially paid, partially volunteer. The Houston Fire Department has a Type 1 regional response hazardous materials team, so we have been called to assist with that, as well as Harris County also has a Type 1 hazardous materials team.
Okay. Are you feeling confident that these, along with the assistance of the Type 1 hazmat crews, that the situation is in hand, as it were?
Yeah. As bad as it looks, our personnel are well trained in this. They are able to deal with these types of things with the assistance of the professionals from the plant itself to provide us the intel on what we're dealing with, and together we can usually take care of these.
Yeah, Richard, when we look at the video, I recall from the ITC facility, there was a fire for several days, and I know in that case they decided to let it burn itself out for a few days. In this case, we still don't know. How long before they make a decision on that?
They'll be making those decisions fairly quickly. Again, it's kind of a step-by-step process. Keep it from getting any bigger first, and then evaluate the best way to attack what is actually burning at the time. Sometimes they may need to pump product out. Sometimes it's better to let it burn, and sometimes it's better to suppress it with foam and put it out. So those will be the things that they'll be looking at.
Richard Mann with the Houston Fire Department. Sir, thank you for your time and your expertise. Sherman, you have another question?
I do, and just, as a layperson watching this video from Air 11 over the last 2+ hours, 3 hours, we saw some firefighters standing on the ground. I don't know, they looked to me a couple of dozen yards maybe back from the fire, manning hoses, pouring water, handheld hoses onto the fire. That seems awfully close to the layperson, but I guess they've considered all the potential issues?
Yes, that is our first consideration for these type of incidents. That there is no plant that's worth any of our personnel, so they will have evaluated that. Each one of those people that you see that are in there are going to be being their equipment, their personal body will be decontaminated as they exit that incident each time.
And do you have any idea, because we've been watching this, it looks like there are 2 areas that are burning, and then a charred area in the middle. Have you had any word whether there was one explosion and one fire or multiple locations?
Again, I'm not on scene, but I touched base with our hazardous materials coordinator who just arrived, and he conveyed there were 2 tanks they were dealing with, and then a partial a warehouse as well. So part of the warehouse was on fire, and two tanks.
Okay, and is it your understanding that all of this ignited at one time, or
I didn't really go into that with him,
okay.
So I'm not sure.
All right, 2 tanks and 1 warehouse. That is new information for us. Chief Mann, thank you so much from the Houston Fire Department, giving us a little perspective on these types of incidents. We appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
And any moment now, we are awaiting a news conference from the Harris County Fire Marshal. They are setting the mics up, we are told right now, and as we wait for that news conference to get updates, we have this information for you. Harris County Precinct 2 has temporarily closed Crosby Park the community center, as well as the sports complex that's in Crosby. That is both the park, the community center in Crosby, as well as the sports complex has been temporarily closed, no doubt, until they get a handle on what the situation is and they feel comfortable that people can actually be out and attend these things.
Isobutylene is the initial, the chemical that it's initially believed to be on fire, at least one of the chemicals. We're waiting to hook up with a University of Houston professor of chemical engineering who can speak with more expertise about the health hazards associated with isobutylene. We can tell you that it can be an eye irritant as well as irritating the nose and the throat, can cause headache and dizziness and fatigue, and we're hoping to learn more shortly.
And that professor is on the phone with us right now.
It's Ramanan Krishnamurti, professor of chemical and biomolecular engineering at the University of Houston. Professor, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Very good to hear from you again. I know we spoke during the ITC fire in Deer Park. So for our viewers and those watching now, isobutylene, what is it? What are the health concerns, sir?
So isobutylene is a hydrocarbon compound. It is used in a lot of different applications, used in in aviation gasoline, used for making plastics, used for packaging, used in food as an antioxidant. It's a straight chain hydrocarbon, a lot like polyethylene or polypropylene, and the material itself is a gas at room temperature. It can be a liquid at high pressures, but usually a gas. So it's got a very high vapor pressure, so will go into the environment very quickly. By itself, it's pretty inert, but in the presence of certain other chemicals, it can become explosive and highly flammable, and causes significant irritation if you breathe it or get it on your skin.
Give us some context and perspective, Dr. Krishnamurti, in terms of on the scale of health hazards. And if this is not your area of expertise, please let us know. But we talked a lot about, benzene at the ITC fire. Isobutylene compared to a benzene, give us again some perspective on,
Sure.
on the health hazards or potential health hazards.
It's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you that in terms of the kinds of risks associated with isobutylene as compared to benzene, very, very different. Benzene is a known carcinogen. It has got long-term exposure issues. On the other hand, isobutylene has short-term exposure issues, does not have long-term exposure issues such as cancer or producing any type of mutation. So from that sense, a very, very different type of chemical, very different health risks associated with it, but the short-term risk of creating challenges for respiratory systems as well as skin, certainly isobutylene is there with any of the other chemicals that can get combusted and put into the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of a manufacturing standpoint, is this, we know this plant is in the business of custom toll manufacturing. For us lay people, we don't necessarily know what that means. Essentially, are they taking, raw materials, blending them together with various processes to put out an end product?
Sure. So what they do is they have specialized equipment that many chemical companies, even very large chemical companies, will come to them with raw material and ask them to run specific processes. And these specific processes might be either a distillation process, a separation process, or a reaction, and where they perform this specific chemical process, and then whatever intermediate products are created is supplied back to the chemical company, where they might take it through the next stages of manufacturing before it comes to be a final product that comes to consumers. So this is what toll manufacturers do. This is one of the largest toll manufacturers in the world, and a couple years ago they went through a pretty significant management change, and with the goal of trying to be a lot more safe. And so from a supply chain perspective, they are really an intermediate chemical producer, not a final product producer.
Professor, it sounds like you have a fair amount of knowledge about this company. Has it been on your radar screen?
It was on the radar screens between 2009 and 2014 where they had some significant safety challenges. They've been cited for several issues and then fined by the government by OSHA and by the Rail Safety Board. But since 2016, they've certainly not had any significant safety violations that have been recorded or where they've been fined for.
The bottom line, though, in perspective, again, and that's key because we have several school districts having a shelter in place, in terms of the chemical, if in fact it's isobutylene, it's far lower on the scale of health concerns long term. You're saying there may be some short-term eye, nose, and throat irritations, dizziness perhaps,
Yes.
but more of an annoyance. Is that a safe way to put it?
Well,
Or you tell us.
If the only chemical that is burning is isobutylene, and the real challenge is we know that isobutylene started the fire. We don't know what other chemicals are there at this site. Knowing that they're a toll producer, where they're bringing in all different types of chemicals, processing them, and then perhaps even storing them and then sending them back, we don't know what other chemicals are there. We don't know what else is on fire. What caused the fire is going to be important, but where else it has spread is also really important. So I don't think we know for certain that isobutylene is the only chemical that is burning right now. We know that started the fire. We need to certainly know more about what other chemicals are at that site and what else is combusting.
All right, Dr. Krishnamurti with the University of Houston Chemical Engineering. Sherman had one more quick question before we let you go.
Yeah, Doctor, just, we see the smoke, and that's obviously the most dramatic part for, folks living in that area. Can you talk at all about the impact of that when, sediment maybe comes back down to the ground, or if there is ash, as we saw in the ITC plant fire? Are you able to talk a little bit about that or any of the potential health implications of that?
So the particulate matter is going to cause challenges for people with respiratory conditions. But what you're not seeing is perhaps more important. And a lot of the organic vapors, whether it's isobutylene or other chemicals, are not going to be seen. And that's what is going to possibly cause you challenges with short and long-term health concerns. And so, seeing the soot there is no pleasant fact, but really not knowing what else is in the air is why I would suggest that people either shelter in place, try and find ways to minimize contact with the external air, or try, if they're in a position where they can leave that area, then leave that area, because this is it's in everybody's best interest to not be exposed to some of those chemicals.
Dr. Krishnamurti, University of Houston, thanks for sharing your time and your expertise, sir. We appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you.
So clearly, given the information from the expert there, it is the unknown that is of concern. As he said, this isobutylene, not on the same scale as benzene, short-term health risk. However, we don't know what else is burning. And so that's going to take time to figure that out.
And of course, we heard from the Houston Fire Department Assistant Chief. There's 2 tanks in a portion of a warehouse. Speaking to your point, Len, what was in the other tank, what was in the warehouse, we just don't know yet.
Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez sent out a tweet, I understand. Here it is. And it says, parents with children in schools working with all districts in real time, trying to coordinate safe release of all children. He goes on to say, with an explanation here, Ed Gonzalez, Harris County Sheriff.
This is a separate tweet now. He is just telling us is that a transfer line ignited in the area of a tank with the isobutylene, and that tank caught fire. Then an adjacent storage building with solid goods also caught fire. Authorities trying to contain that. That consistent with Fire Chief Mann, who told us that 2 tanks
and a warehouse.
Had caught on fire.
So they're saying solid goods. I don't know what that would be. He goes on to say EPA has been on the ground, in the air, no actionable detections at this time. That's the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, checking the ground and the air. And we should emphasize no actionable detection at this time. so things can change. You heard the doctor say it is probably wise to limit your outdoor exposure in this area, which is why you have 3 school districts with a shelter in place. And again, let's remind everybody, there has been 1 fatality, we believe to be someone who works at the plant, and other folks injured, but 1 person has died in this explosion.
And now we should just update, we've just gotten word that Sheldon ISD has lifted its shelter in place. Sheldon ISD has lifted its shelter in place. Dayton ISD is not sheltering in place either, so now we are down to just the 2 school districts there. That are sheltering in place. Last we heard, and we are continuing to monitor that, of course. We are waiting on a press conference, which we hope will be starting shortly here. This is going to be by the Harris County Fire Marshal. We'll wait to see if there'll be any representatives from Chemco as well. But you can see the sheriff has also been tweeting, been active. There has been a staging area near the Valero station where we have seen Adam Bennett interviewing employees who were at the facility working at the time of the blast. They naturally felt the explosion. They had a little bit of warning, not much, ahead of the actual explosion, saying they heard increased radio traffic going back and forth, and then getting word that they needed to evacuate. Then just almost immediately after, from their description, there was the blast, and then people just went running. Once outside the perimeter of the facility, they were able to go ahead and get a head count. We know that there has been 1 fatality and at least 2 injuries. We did hear that there was 1 unaccounted for. We haven't quite resolved whether or not that
is the same person.
Right.
So this is a live look from Air 11, and you can see here from this vantage point, we can't see any flames right now. That would indicate that perhaps they are improving in terms of, well, there's some flames there. There we go. So you can still see flames right there near the ground, all that thick black smoke pouring, but it doesn't appear to be as widespread as it was, say, about an hour ago. But this is an ongoing situation. It's going to take days to figure out exactly all the health risks. In spite of what we're hearing from the EPA and everything right now, it's going to take some time to figure this out. As again, we mentioned, 1 dead, at least 2 hurt. This is the Crosby chemical fire at the Chemco plant in Crosby. Both Crosby and Channelview ISD remain on lockdown. They're sheltering in place. There is no more shelter in place at 2 other school districts in the area. So that is a good sign, but still 2 districts are. And also in Crosby, they have closed the park there, the sports complex. They're just trying to limit, I think, exposure in particular for children who might get out and want to play or do anything like that.
This is now hour 3, almost down to the minute. We heard the first reports, Len, of this explosion and fire happening right around 10:45 this morning. We were monitoring emergency dispatch traffic with Crosby Fire Department, who was one of the first responders on scene, talking about that thick, heavy smoke, talking about 1 patient needing to be transported to the hospital with third degree burns to that person's face and arms. And of course, for a while there, we had that 1 missing person. And then subsequently, we heard the confirmation of a fatality. Again, don't know if that was the missing person or not.
And again, if you're just joining us now, what you're looking at here is video from earlier, and you can see a lot more flames and a lot more widespread there. But we just showed you live video not too long ago, and it was not this expansive as what you're seeing in this video. So we just have to remind you that at times we will be live. This is right now. This is live from Air 11, and you can see a significant change in terms of fewer flames. We have seen some flames still near the ground, and you can see black smoke turning to gray, and perhaps it looks like they're getting a better handle on this fire. You got a lot of folks attacking it. They've been working on this thing for, as Jeremy just mentioned, 3 hours, and so this looks much better.
For sure.
I have to say, compared to, we can still see some flames, as you see screen right, you see some flames. So we're still waiting for a news conference from the Harris County Fire Marshal. They said it should be happening any moment now. We hope to hear from the Fire Marshal, perhaps someone, a spokesperson from the plant, get an update on injuries, fatalities, etc. We understand people are now walking up to the microphones. So we'll wait for that and hear what information they have. It'll be the first time that we will have heard somebody on a microphone addressing this plant fire and explosion. And Mia Gradney joins us now. Another busy day. Mia, another plant fire.
I know,
So,
in such a short amount of time. I mean, people have barely been able to come up for air. Let's go live now to that news press conference getting underway.
waiting on Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. He's, we believe, maybe the first person who will speak. We'll just have to wait and see. But they were about 20 minutes late. This is Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. Let's listen in. And Lena Hidalgo, the Harris County judge, is also there. Looks like the Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo will be the first to speak.
Can I move these down somehow?
And Sheriff Gonzalez and his office have been so good about getting out information today on Twitter about what's happening at the Kimco plant. So we're going to hear a firsthand account from him now, what he knows. Just in the past 11 minutes, he said, "Of what I know, a transfer line ignited in the area of a tank with isobutylene, and the tank caught on fire. An adjacent storage building with solid goods also caught fire, trying to contain."
Good afternoon. We're actively monitoring and responding to this active incident. We are saddened, and my heart and our hearts go out to the families of those who were injured and the person who passed away as a result of this situation. You have here our law enforcement partners that are working to support the fire chief and the company in addressing this incident. As we speak, Harris County's air monitoring operation is collecting readings and standing up a website so they can make sure to have the information as soon as they receive it. The EPA has been monitoring the air quality and will be providing a report shortly. And we will continue watching and responding. I know it is disturbing. It is disturbing and it is problematic that we're seeing this incident in a facility, especially on the heels of ITC. We will work with our partners to put this out, to continue responding, and to address this situation as quickly and in the best way possible. Let me introduce our sheriff, who will provide a law enforcement update. Right now, the call is for the community to heed the advice of law enforcement. This is an ongoing, dynamic, evolving incident, and folks need to be aware and to respond to the information that law enforcement is providing. Estamos aquí respondiendo a este incidente que acaba de empezar. Tenemos aquí todos nuestros socios de servicios y también estamos monitoreando el aire. Nos da mucha tristeza la muerte que ha sucedido como resultado de este incidente y también las personas que se han visto afectadas y que están en este momento en el hospital. Tenemos aquí socios trabajando para contener el incendio, apoyando a la compañía y también apoyando al jefe de policías de Crosby al apagar este incendio. El condado en este momento está monitoreando la calidad del agua y también creando la página web para proveer información. Tenemos aquí al gobierno federal, al EPA, quien nos va a dar información acerca de la calidad del aire. Sus medidas hasta ahora no han mostrado calidad problemática. Seguiremos monitoreando y respondiendo a esta situación. Es muy problemático el hecho de que hay aquí otra situación en otra compañía, ya justo después del incidente que sucedió hace un par de semanas y que continúa en la compañía de ITC. Vamos a trabajar para ayudar a los socios a apagar este incendio, para responder a la situación, y en este momento se le pide a la comunidad que se mantenga al tanto con la información que estamos poniendo a través de los medios, ya que esta situación continuamos respondiendo. Es una situación dinámica que acaba de comenzar y va a seguir evolucionando. Voy a presentar ahora al sheriff, quien va a dar información acerca de la situación. Sheriff.
Thank you, Judge. First, on behalf of the Harris County Sheriff's Office, our condolences go out to the individual that has lost his or her life, as well as the other two that are still battling for their life, and our condolences to the family. Our Harris County Sheriff's Office industrial team, as well as our patrol officers, are out here assisting with both support and perimeter control. This is a multi-agency response, so we're also working with the Harris County Precinct 3 Constable's Office, DPS, and other law enforcement agencies as well. We understand that some of the schools obviously are sheltered in place in the area, so we're working in real time with those school districts right now so we could work on an orderly plan to make sure that we could get those children into their parents' arms and get them back home as quickly as possible. We hope to be able to roll out a plan here in the next few minutes or so as soon as this press conference is over. You know, obviously our main focus right now is to make sure that we're in support to try to contain this. It's my understanding that a transfer line is what initially ignited, and then an adjacent tank is what caught fire with isobutylene, and then an adjacent storage container next to that as well. Our understanding is that there are no active readings in the area, neither on the air or on the ground right now, but there are some other fluids or chemicals in the complex that are concerning to us as well, so we're actively monitoring that, and we'll update as soon as we know something as well. We know that getting the information to you is very critical, so from a public safety standpoint, that's what we want right now, just for the public to follow all of your news channels so they could get the most recent information on any additional evacuations or anything right now. There is a shelter in place for the area right now, and we'll update that as soon as we know something. We're on the ground. I'm out here on the ground with the judge. Also, Commissioner Garcia's office is represented here as well. So everybody's working together as well as with law enforcement. En este momento estamos trabajando con los distritos escolares para desarrollar un plan para poder que los niños puedan salir de las escuelas. Estamos monitoreando lo que está pasando. Está aquí la oficina del alguacil del condado de Harris, también con otros elementos también de otros departamentos para estar seguro que la seguridad pública sea la prioridad número uno. Entonces todo esto es una situación que se está desarrollando en tiempo real, es una situación dinámica y tan pronto que sepamos algo, le dejamos saber a los medios para que lo puedan reportar a la comunidad. At this time, I'll turn it over to Rachel. Before we take any questions, I'll turn it over for Rachel with Fire Marshal's office.
So the Harris County Fire Marshal's office was notified around 11 a.m. this morning of a fire and explosion at the Kimco facility. Hazmat crews and fire investigators, as well as inspectors, also arrived on scene shortly thereafter. We are working with the company to determine exactly what chemicals are on site and in the warehouse that is on fire. As the sheriff said, we believe it started with an isobutylene transfer line, and then that started the fire, which then spread to the warehouse. Fire crews are working under incident command with Crosby Fire Department, have called in numerous assets to assist with the fire. They are working hard and safe to get the fire out as soon as possible with as little risk to the community as possible. We are also working and aware of the shelter in place. EPA has been on site assisting with monitoring and has found no detectable or actionable detectable items in the air as of right now. Thank you.
Can you tell us about any other chemical? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
EPA is on site at this point with our aerial aspect plane, our mobile Taga bus, and teams out in the field. As was said, at this point we have not seen any detections at action levels. We'll continue to be monitoring throughout the community until the fire is out.
And what's the status of the fire right now? The smoke has digressed a lot. Very little coming up. Is it out or close to it?
When we left to come over here, it was still going. We have numerous assets, some that actually came from the ITC facility to come assist with the putting out the fire, so they are working on it. The plume, as you can probably see, is smaller, so I think they are making progress, but as soon as we get back, we'll get an update to provide you more info.
And fire is contained, would you say, at this point?
It's contained to the unit. They are working to keep it cooled so it doesn't spread to more of the different items tanks that are there. So they are working on that. They have a plan. They're executing the plan, and it should be out soon.
Is it only the isobutylene that's burning right now?
Right now, that's all that we are aware that's burning. It did go to a warehouse that has some dry chemical storage. The company is working on getting us a complete list of that. But again, we've got EPA monitoring, and we know right now there's nothing in the air.
So there are other chemicals burning. You just don't know what they are.
Yeah, they're dry chemicals in a warehouse. They explained it to me as dry combustibles. So again, we don't have a specific list, but we are working with the company to get that.
We talked to a couple of people earlier who said they had evacuated that area. Is there an evacuation order in place for anyone in the area?
There's no evacuation order that's been in place that we are aware of. Some of the local schools did shelter in place, and we are working with them right now to get them the information about the air monitoring so we can make the decision to let the kids go home from school.
The gentlemen who were injured and one who was killed, where were they in the plant? Do you know?
That's still under investigation. Right now, our investigators are on site, and they are working with people from the plant. They're doing interviews, so we're trying to get all that information. The two that were life-flighted are in critical condition.
Do you know what this company, and this may be for the EPA, do you know what this company's history is as far as these kinds of incidents go?
I don't have that information right now. It'll be part of our investigation.
How reliable is that real-time air and ground monitoring? Or does it take some time to know what's actually in the air, your readings, and possibly in the water and on the ground?
Our readings are real time, so if we are seeing anything, we get called, and at that time we let the incident command know what we're seeing.
Explain to our viewers how that works. How do you monitor the air?
Well, we have handheld monitors, so we have a team out with a handheld monitor, and then we have what's called our TAGA, or Trace Atmospheric Gas Asset, and I don't know for sure, but our TAGA bus, which was has been down in Deer Park. They're up here, and they can read values down to parts per billion, which are well below any actionable levels. So they're out, give us real-time readings, as well as the aspect flight that has been out in the plume this morning as well.
So what is the danger level for people in Crosby and also just in some of the surrounding cities as well?
Well, at this point, again, everything seems to be contained, so they're actively trying to distinguish or extinguish the flame. You know, my personal concern is that there are other tanks on the facility, so until we get an accurate description of everything that's there and levels and all that, then, you know, obviously this is still a dynamic situation, so we want to manage expectations a little bit. We're on the ground here. As soon as we get more information, we'll be able to report it. This is just an initial presser, if you will, just to give you some of the basics that we have. It's still ongoing. It's still active investigation. We have a lot of different partners, both on the fire side of things as well as on the police side. So as soon as we know something, we'll report it back. We have been in touch with the company officials as well. So again, as soon as we learn more about what else is on site, then we'll be able to report more accurately.
Why is that such a process? Shouldn't the company have an inventory of what's on site that they just hand to you?
Well, we have a lot of personnel on site, so we're trying to coordinate them arriving on the site and just talking to everybody. So it's a process. We learn from all of these, and you know we'll learn from this one in terms of what they have. They may already have the information, but when we came over here, I still didn't have it.
You just mentioned that the main concern is to make sure that, and she mentioned that it's contained.
Yeah.
However, we want to know what is the probability that this will start all over again. We saw what happened in ITC, where it started again, and so the community wants to know. En español también, por favor.
Well, I mean, it could happen again, as we've seen with ITC. Each situation is different. This is a dynamic situation. We've got to, you know, touch base with our fire personnel that are on the scene and the other professionals there. So again, as soon as we know something, we'll report it back. We don't know the extent of this, and so we're trying to contain it right now. So that's our main focus right now, to notify the community. En este momento no sabemos si puede volver. Todavía se está encendiendo el tanque que inició la flema inicial. Entonces en este momento no está bajo control eso. Entonces es lo que estamos atendiendo en este momento. Lo mejor es que se pague y se termine todo, pero también puede ocurrir como pasó en Deer Park, que vuelve a encenderse otra vez más, algo más. Entonces es algo dinámico. So at this time, that's all we have right now. Sorry, I wish we could give more. And we'll try to work with the company officials as well.
Sheriff, was the company able to tell you what was in that tank?
The isobutylene.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for people who were not at home when this happened and are going to be coming home shortly, what would you tell them? Should they stay out of the area or go home?
You know, obviously they have to use their best judgment. We don't have a mandatory evacuation or anything of the sort. You know, we're working. Our main priority right now is getting the kids out of there. And then we'll continue to update as we've tried to do with social media and other platforms to make sure we get the information out.
Getting the kids out of the school.
Yes, correct. Yeah, we're working on a plan right now. There are no actionable readings right now, so we think we could do that safely. So we've got police personnel from different agencies at each school right now to coordinate the evacuation of the kids to the parents in an orderly fashion.
Now, which schools? All the schools?
The different schools that are impacted, that are shut down right now. I think whoever has the shelters in place, so it'll be Crosby, Sheldon, and Channelview.
Sheriff, has the water been tested as well?
We have EPA and TCEQs on site as well. They were doing that. I don't have that information.
I mean, fundamentally, it is an ongoing situation. Right now, as we mentioned, EPA is seeing no actionable readings. The county is continuing to monitor the air. The plea to the community is to stay alert and watching any updates that come from all our partners that will continue to keep the community informed were this to take a turn for better or for worse. And so we will be providing information to the community as soon as we have it. En un nivel fundamental, lo que está sucediendo es un incidente que continúa evolucionando. Como se informó, nuestros socios federales no están viendo ninguna medida a la calidad del aire que cause alarma. También el condado está monitoreando el aire, están todos trabajando por extinguir el incendio, pero se le pide a la comunidad que se mantenga alerta. El condado y todos los socios darán información, sea la situación mejor o peor, en cuanto continúe evolucionando. Thank you all so much.
Can we get your names? Do you mind just stepping up and give your first and last name?
Rachel Marine.
Okay, we are back now. If you're joining us live, we just got an update from a number of county officials. Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office, a representative with them, and then Sheriff Ed Gonzalez as well, giving us an update at this explosion and fire that happened at the Kimco plant in Crosby at 10:45 this morning. We are told at this hour from the Fire Marshal's Office that they are making progress with the fire. You can see the smoke, nothing like what it was earlier, just an hour ago. They're making progress. They have numerous assets that they are using, even including resources from the ITC fire in Deer Park, what they used to fight there. As far as the big concern for people, this chemical that we're hearing about, the isobutylene, folks want to know what is the situation with the air quality right now. We heard from the EPA that they are monitoring and they are going to post a report shortly. But what they do know in the meantime, there are no detectable elements in the air, and they are using very specific equipment that we got familiar with during the ITC fire to monitor this as well. They have their TAGA bus, the trace atmospheric gas bus that is out in the community. They also have ground crews monitoring the air. If for any reason they get any type of spike, any level reading, they will be in touch with the command center and take action from there. But at this time, no detectable elements of any of this chemical in the air thus far.
Yeah, thus far. We should emphasize that because we know things can change. But right now, things have improved there. We heard from the Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, and one of the first things she said was, I know it is disturbing. We are seeing this on the heels of ITC, and she is absolutely right about that. As to what caused the fire, well, here's the explanation we have so far. They're saying that a transfer line ignited a tank with isobutylene. Now, we talked to an expert who told us that isobutylene is not as dangerous as benzene, which is what we saw in the ITC fire in Deer Park. It has short-term problems for people, not long-term. It is not nearly as dangerous as what we saw at the ITC facility. What they're still trying to determine is what exactly is in the warehouse where there are dry chemicals in there. We don't know exactly what those chemicals are. The firefighters are trying to cool surrounding tanks to contain the fire to make sure it does not spread. Sheriff Gonzalez has asked, what's the possibility that this could reignite and spread like we saw in Deer Park? He basically said, look, there's no guarantee, but the effort is to try and contain it right where it is so it does not spread to other tanks.
And they're working to get information as to exactly what those other dry chemicals, combustibles, they even went as far to say exactly are. They're working with Kimco trying to assess that information.
Jeremy?
Sheriff Gonzalez also saying that they're working with law enforcement partners. They have officers at various schools in the two districts that remain to have a shelter in place intact, those being Crosby ISD and Channelview ISD at this hour. The shelter in place for Sheldon ISD, we understand, has been lifted just a few minutes ago.
Yes.
We should also say that Precinct 2, the Commissioner's office there, has closed Crosby area parks, the Crosby Sports Complex, and the Crosby Community Center. So as we're approaching the end of school day, you know, the next big question is for parents, how are they going to negotiate the safe release of all these students, so on and so forth. That remains to be seen. Hopefully things will get better quicker so that kids can get home.
Yeah, and our county officials touched on that. They said that they're working to get the info on the air monitoring so they can let kids go home from school in a safe manner. They know obviously parents want to reunite with their children and comfort them, but they want to make sure that they take every precaution here. And to tack on that list that you just mentioned, Jeremy, so KEP, that's in Northeast Houston as we understand it, they have a shelter in place in effect. And then HISD just wanted to note that its campuses on its east end toward the north side, there will be no outdoor activities after school, taking those precautions there as well.
Yeah, they don't want to take any chances here, but we do know a couple of shelter in places were stopped and that parents could go and pick their kids up. And so those folks have already probably well on their way to doing so. And a couple of districts, HISD now affected, but that's an abundance of caution because as we just went through the drill in the last 2 weeks, I think they want to be careful not to assume anything and to be very careful. And it's a moment-by-moment situation. Right now, no actionable notice in the air or on the ground. According to the EPA, someone asked, well, how fast are you getting the readings? They're saying it's real time. So what we're telling you now is what we're seeing right now.
There are some unknowns, and they readily admitted, officials did, the unknowns. The adjacent warehouse that caught fire has some, quote, dry combustibles in that. When asked the fire marshal's office, what are those chemicals, she readily admitted, we just don't know. We're working with the company to find out. So given that unknown, we know that isobutylene is the main chemical that caught fire. We don't know what was in that warehouse. Makes even more sense to have children, to have students remain in those school buildings with the HVAC systems off and the shelter in place still intact until they get a better handle on it.
Yeah, so it's an inconvenience, certainly a concern on the one hand. On the other hand, it's tragic because one worker did die, 2 others were life flighted to the hospital, and those workers, we are told, are in critical condition.
And we heard Sheriff Gonzalez offering his condolences at the very beginning. You know, we often forget or maybe take for granted, since these facilities surround the city of Houston, that this is very dangerous work for so many people who go out there and do it. I know Adam Bennett, who was on the ground there at the Valero gas station, was talking with a worker at the Kimco plant, and he said that it was rather chaotic when they started evacuating and exiting. But they knew that, yes, they knew they had to get out because danger, of course, was just around the corner for them. So very dangerous work, and that's why the process of even trying to contain and control these fires is so very delicate. And even though we're not seeing as much smoke now as we did earlier, we do know that there's an ongoing effort to make sure that those tanks are kept cool, because just as we saw with ITC, it just takes one thing for us to see a flare and something reignite.
And that's exactly what happened there. Hopefully they can contain it here, and this thing will be over a lot sooner. David Paul monitoring the weather. Welcome, David.
Hey guys, how are we doing? Another one of these. I'm very happy to see that it looks like they're getting a good handle on this, although I still see some black smoke. When you see black smoke, as you guys have been telling us, that means there is still an active fire. There's flames. When the smoke goes white, in fact, you can see white smoke just to the left near our headline banner there. That's where the flames have been extinguished. Black is flames, white is extinguished, but still you can see it's distributing smoke up into the atmosphere. The atmosphere is very calm today. Very, very calm winds. The smoke is going basically straight up. So let me set your bearings here, and I'll show you what the winds are doing now and what the forecast is as we head into the evening and tomorrow. The fire is in Crosby. That is right here, northeast Harris County, just to the north of the Crosby area. And what are the winds doing? Well, they're very, very light. If anything, they're coming out of the northeast, which means they're blowing whatever is burning there to the south and west toward Houston, Mount Park, Channelview, Galena Park, and Houston. But again, almost all the smoke is going straight up to about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet. So that's good that it's going straight up. The winds are so light northeast at 5 to 7. A closer view of some of the areas closer to the fire. Of course, there's Crosby, Barrett almost due south, and then Magnolia Gardens and Sheldon. You're in the path of that wind, but again, almost all that smoke right now going straight up and not hovering in and around surface neighborhoods. So surface wind forecast. So here we are with that light northeast breeze. Again, Crosby right out here where that fire is burning. Winds are going to be shifting. So this is going into 8:30 tonight. they'll come out of the southeast, so they're going to be more of a southerly flow going into tonight. That's a reflection of an approaching storm system, the one we've been talking about for the past couple of days. This is Wednesday morning and still an east and southeast flow, so if we still have issues there, winds will be blowing whatever's coming out of that to the east, to the west and northwest as we head into tonight and tomorrow. So that's where we stand with the winds. Again, here's a closer view of the way it stands right now. You've got this very light northeast flow. This is Crosby. There's the fire. Magnolia Gardens and Sheldon would be in the path of that wind forecast, which again, there you go, coming out of the northeast now. But let me show you that forecast one more time. It is going to change as early as this evening to the southeast and then continue to be east and southeast as we head into Wednesday. So Mother Nature is helping us a little bit here with the very, very light winds. Also, there's no temperature inversion, so the smoke is going straight up. I'm glad to see it looks like they're getting a handle on that. We'll keep you posted in case anything flares up and starts to change, guys.
All right, David, Paul, thank you for the update. A couple of notes. First, Mia, you want to tell us about Sheldon ISD, what's going on there?
Yes, so Sheldon ISD, they had lifted their shelter in place earlier, but they are continuing to limit outdoor activities. They want the community and parents to know that as well. But if parents still are uncomfortable, they are more than welcome to pick up their child early from school today. Other than that, they'll have their normal dismissal, but they will limit those outdoor activities.
As for Channelview ISD, we are told they're telling students and staff to remain indoors because they do have a shelter in place, but there will be normal release time for Channelview ISD, which should be coming up here within the next hour or so, I would assume. Channelview ISD remaining indoors for students and staff, but there will be normal release time for folks in Channelview.
Yes, and you know, so many people are watching this, you know, they're wondering, well, if there are no detectable signs of a chemical in the air, then why still the shelter in place? Everything is done in precaution because while this doesn't have a long-term effect that we learned from an expert earlier, the isobutylene, the chemical that we're dealing with here, it does have a short-term effect and could have an impact on your health today. So this is what we know about that chemical. I'm sure a lot of you are online trying to find out more information, so here it is for you. It's a highly flammable, colorless gas, and it can cause a faint petroleum-like odor. It's used in the manufacturing of a number of things. Plastics, everything from plastics, in fact, to antioxidants, he even said. So a range of materials. That's what we know about the isobutylene. But the question here now is, what else is there at the facility in that nearby warehouse, those dry combustibles that we've been talking about and that Sheriff Gonzalez expressed concern about? They want to know more about exactly what's being stored there in the warehouse, and they're working with Chemco to get that information, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, sooner than later. As you take a look at the Air 11 right here, is this a live shot here, guys? On Air 11? Because we've been watching video. Looks live, yeah. So you can see this is much improved. You don't see as much black smoke as we saw earlier, and we can't tell from this vantage point whether there are still flames. But right before we heard from the Harris County Fire Marshal about 15 minutes ago, she said right before they walked over to address reporters, she said that they believe that this fire will be out soon, that it is contained, in her words, for the time being.
I want to interrupt you real quick, Lynn. We are just hearing that Crosby ISD has lifted its shelter in place at all schools now. So Crosby ISD now operating regularly, but I'm sure much like the other school districts, if you still have a concern as a parent, you can reach out and make your way to the school, I'm sure. But it's being lifted, and maybe they feel reassured seeing now that smoke plume not as large as it was, learning more about potentially what is not in the air. But still, this information in this situation very fluid at this time at 2:16 in the afternoon here, and just a couple of weeks after ITC, now dealing with another emergency and disaster at a nearby facility.
That leaves Channelview ISD is the only one that remains with shelter in place, and we just told you moments ago that they will have their normal release time. So that's good news for parents there.
Judge Lena Hidalgo, when she addressed reporters, the takeaways there, quote, disturbing and problematic is how she described this fire, and she specifically said because it's on the heels of ITC in Deer Park, which we've been really living day to day to day, and now we see this. on the northeast side of the county.
Jeremy, you know, she mentioned disturbing and problematic. That wants me to talk a little bit more about the history of Kimco. I know you've been researching it as this has been happening this morning into the afternoon. They have a bit of a history there with violations.
They certainly do. So state environmental regulators over the past 20 or so years have fined this company around $140,000. That's from an initial review of enforcement actions. Additionally, though, the state and federal regulators filed criminal charges against a company, which is not unheard of, but it certainly would fall more on the rare column. And as part of that, the company Kimco was fined more than $3 million for those criminal violations. Additionally, Len and Mia, the Harris County Attorney's Office, the Office of Vince Ryan, has sued this company twice, and in fact they currently have a pending case. And I spoke with the number 2 person in charge at the County Attorney's Office who said that we thought we were close to a settlement, but after what we're seeing right now, we're going to pull back on that and revisit the issue. That was for violations of both the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. And so history is certainly a proper way to describe this company's past in terms of complying, or more, shall we say, not complying with air and water quality laws. Add to that, you have workplace and worker safety violations, and we took an initial glance at OSHA violations, and this company had dozens over the past decade, including a $250,000 fine for several violations between 2010 and 2013. So
is that normal for a company that operates at this capacity and this size, though, Jeremy?
You know, empirically, I'm not able to say what's normal, what's an outlier.
Gotcha.
But when you have, you know, fines, administrative fines from regulators, and then you add to that, they actually got sued, not once, but twice since 2008.
And criminal charges.
And then add to that criminal charges. I think when you combine that, it paints a picture that would certainly fall into this is not the normal course of business. When we look at plants, certainly there are administrative fines from state and federal regulators, you know, in the tens of thousands of dollars. That's more
and I'm sure
the course.
I think that it's the course of doing business when you're working with these kind of chemicals, the nature of the business.
Certainly.
I think that happens. But based on what you have laid out for us with Kimco, it sounds alarming in terms of the pattern and how often we have seen the issues come up.
Criminal obviously elevates the game as opposed to just administrative fines or even civil actions. And so you have really kind of a trifecta of enforcement going on over the past decade. You have state administrative fines, you have this company getting sued multiple times, and then you have criminal violations against this company. My colleague Cheryl Mercedes is currently looking into this more and is going to have more updates as we go along.
And this is not their only plant facility, as we understand it.
They have one in Port Arthur.
Okay. And they employ about 180 full-time employees. This is at the Crosby facility. And we've learned over the course of the day that they have over 600 tanks, 28 reactors, and 250 rail storage spots. Just giving you a little bit more information about Kimco and the facility where this explosion and fire happened this morning. What do they make there? What do they produce? Antifreeze, brake fluid, oil field, glycol, and cement grinding products as well.
All right, it's now 2:20 in the afternoon. If you're just joining us and you don't see regular programming, we have been on the air now for a little over 3 hours since this plant fire and explosion in Crosby at Kimco. What is burning, as you look on your screen there, isobutylene. It is highly flammable, a colorless gas, but an expert says it has short-term effects for people in terms of your skin and upper respiratory issues, but not the long-term effects as what was described with benzene at the ITC facility fire. That is a bit of good news. Also, we learned about a half hour ago that firefighters believe that they have this fire contained. They have continued to cool off the surrounding tanks that could be where this fire could spread to. And you could see the black smoke there. From this vantage point, we do not see any more flames. It doesn't, well, there they are. So you can still see the flames there, but it's not high into the
Not
air
at the
like we saw
intensity
earlier.
that we saw.
No.
That is certain. It's more comforting seeing this image at the least. And just in the past 20 minutes, we've learned new updated information about our shelter in places at the various school districts in that area. Most recently, we learned that Crosby ISD has lifted its shelter in place for all of its schools. The same earlier we learned about Sheldon ISD. However, they're going to continue to limit outdoor activities there, and parents can pick up their children early if they see so fit. But we have the shelter in place for at least a 1-mile radius of Kimco, and that's erring on the side of caution there.
Both Sheldon ISD and Channelview ISD tweeting that they will dismiss students at their normal, regularly scheduled dismissal times, but as you mentioned, Mia, if parents of Sheldon ISD students want to pick them up early, they are free to do so. So we're beginning to see the pendulum swing towards some semblance of normalcy. I think that is a fair way to describe things after being on the air now for 3.5 hours since this fire broke out.
You know, and people are, even though they're receiving the information and they're seeing the smoke plume get smaller there, you know, folks remember what happened here just a couple of weeks ago, and that has them a little, you know, on edge and most likely reactive. I know we saw Janelle Beluda out earlier there in the community, and she had met up with some parents on the side of the road trying to get to their kids at school, and you can understand their sense of urgency seeing what we've all witnessed in these past few weeks with these fires and explosions and just how quickly things can change as well too.
And this is a bit surprising, but they must feel confident. Channelview ISD now saying they will have normal release time from school today. However, they also say all outdoor activities and sports activities that are planned will go on as scheduled. Now, that's unlike some other districts that have said they're going to end their outdoor activities. Channelview is saying outdoor activities and sports will continue as normal. So if you're in the Channelview ISD area, you can make a decision based on your own, but the district is saying we're going to go ahead with everything outdoors.
And, you know, maybe the district feels confident in what we heard from the EPA closer to the top of the hour, letting us know that there were no detectable chemicals in the air. You know, they had their aerial aspect plane out, their mobile trace atmospheric gas analyzers in the community too. They're roving and collecting information and data, and that they were going to continue to monitor throughout the community. The readings are real time, and if they did determine something was happening, something had dispersed in the air, they were going to call the Incident Command Center. So maybe the district feels confident enough in what they're hearing from the EPA to make that decision to continue on with outdoor activities and sports activities.
And again, here's what we've been told about how this fire started. It was a transfer line with butylene that ignited, and then it spread to a warehouse. That warehouse has dry chemicals inside. We don't know, we know they're combustible, but we don't know what kind of chemicals. I would assume that firefighters by now know exactly what that is. They just have not told us, and they're trying to prevent the fire from spreading. They've done a good job. They have limited the scope of the fire based on just a visual observation, and the fire marshal's office said they believe that this will be out soon, but soon is a relative term. That could be an hour, that could be 2 hours. We just don't know, but there's still some flames. Just not as widespread as what we saw earlier.
Yeah, and it's about keeping it contained to that area where they did see the fire and not seeing it travel anymore to that warehouse with the dry combustibles as well. So, you know, it's something they have resources and assets that have come in from different places. We know we saw from the city and the county that they were offering up resources, and we know that resources even from ITC were being used to fight today's fire.
And if you're just joining us, we should mention the Chemco company does confirm that one of its employees did die in this fire. 2 others were taken by helicopter to area hospitals. At last word, I believe,
critical condition.
Critical condition. So certainly that is a serious matter. And from the get-go, Mia and Len, we heard about the impact, just the physical vibration of this explosion. Janelle Beluda talked with a nearby resident. We also heard many folks on social media saying, I live, you know, 3, 4, 5 miles away, and I felt my house shake. And so highly flammable, highly combustible, this isobutylene. And as we heard from the UH chemical engineering professor, it can explode, and it sure did. And you know, many folks saying how they felt the vibration far, far away from this plant.
What we have yet to hear from anyone, and of course all of this is happening so quickly and safety first, but what we've yet to hear from anyone is about an odor in the air, a smell. You know, with ITC, we were hearing from a lot of people that they could smell something, especially when we had those fires overnight, and there was a warning that went off to the community that they could smell something. So we have yet to hear about that, but just because you don't smell something doesn't mean that there isn't anything in the air, although the EPA has yet to detect anything but are currently monitoring the situation.
Yeah, we continue to follow this story for almost 4 hours now, and they're doing a good job of, you can see the smoke is not as dense, it's not as black, it's not reaching into the sky as much, and the fire, the flames are not as widespread. So slowly but surely they are getting a hold of it. Isobutylene is what is burning. We don't know if there are any other chemicals that are burning. They have not updated us on that information. And we have not heard from the fire marshal's office as to when they'll have another news conference to explain exactly what is going on. But we do know, we've got some good news, that most of the shelter-in-place places that were ordered have been lifted in that surrounding area.
And we have another one just right now that we've learned of, the KIPP Northeast campus. They have also lifted their shelter in place.
That lasted, what, about 45 minutes?
Yes.
They sent that order out, now they've lifted it. So that's a great sign.
Yes, yes, that maybe perhaps people are feeling more comfortable with the situation and the fire being contained and the fight there to get it totally out. Of course, weather always plays a huge role in this. We were hearing from David Paul earlier that the weather was playing along. David, are you there?
I'm monitoring the winds as well. You guys want a wind update?
Sure.
It looks good. You know, sometimes strong surface winds can keep the smoke near the surface, but in this case the winds have been very, very light. And in fact, if you follow me on Twitter, David Paul KHU, I'm just right now updated the wind forecast on Twitter, so we can keep up with you there as well. You take Weather 1 and put it on up. You can see I've got to zoom in on the Crosby area, the location of the fire there just to the north of Crosby. And the winds are very, very light, out of the northeast at 5 to 7 miles an hour. And there is no temperature inversion at the surface. That means there's nothing to impede the smoke from rising up. Now that the fire is not as strong and cooling a little bit, the vertical motion of those smoke particles may not be quite as steep, but it is still rising uninhibited up to about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet. So although those winds, you know, are blowing what smoke there is to the south and west, and you see Magnolia Gardens here and Sheldon here, and that's Highway 90, and there's Crosby, there's Barrett. The winds are very, very light, and even as you get into Magnolia Gardens and Sheldon, the smoke by that time is well above the surface. So that may be one of the best things that's happened today. Here's a little larger view so you can set your bearings. There's the fire in northeast Harris County right near Crosby. There's downtown. And again, don't be so alarmed because of these arrows pointing the wind direction in toward the Houston area. By the time it just gets even a mile or so to the west of that of the fire, it's well above ground level, and there's not a whole lot of it. It's nothing like what we saw a couple of weeks ago with the first fire. But again, winds are light. They're blowing out of the northeast at 5 to 7 miles an hour. Here's a closer view. Again, neighborhoods to the southwest, Magnolia Gardens and Sheldon. And let me show you the way the winds are blowing now and how they're going to change. And we will have a shift in wind direction. So if something more serious does happen at the plant over the next 8, 12, 24 hours, here's the way the winds are going to go. Right now it's northeast, blowing winds to the southwest at about 5 to 7 miles an hour. But as we head even into this evening, the winds are going to change. This is by 8:30 tonight. Winds coming in a very different direction out of the southeast. So whatever is coming out of the plant at that point will be blown to the northwest, Atascocita, Spring, Woodlands, Tomball. We'll be keeping a close eye on that for you. And then going into Wednesday, the winds continue east-southeast. So whatever does come out of the plants will be moving closer to the Houston area and perhaps the northern portion of Harris County going into Wednesday morning. But again, at the moment, as you guys have been reporting, it doesn't appear to be nearly as volatile or dangerous a situation as we had with ITC over the past couple of weeks. Once again, just in case you're just joining us, there's the fire with the chemical plant there just in the Crosby area. Very light winds out of the northeast at 5 to 7, blowing smoke toward the southwest. But again, there's no temperature inversion. That means the smoke is uninhibited. It can rise up to several thousand feet, and it's doing exactly that. Even as it gets close to Magnolia Garden and Sheldon, the smoke is by that time well above ground level. And so, you know, so far, not in a tremendously emergency situation, but clearly something we're monitoring very, very carefully. And we'll keep you posted. And, of course, have a complete update on the wind forecast and the changes in the rain and storms that are coming later in the week and the weekend when we see you for our main newscast at 4 o'clock. Guys, that's the way the weather and the winds stand right now. So far, it's about as good a scenario as we could get weather-wise.
Yeah, the weather on our side, fortunately, in this situation today, thank goodness. And as David said, you know, the wind is moving that smoke, but it's able to rise to a point where it's not a danger to anyone. So good update there from David Paul on the weather conditions.
All right, Janelle Bluda has been in Crosby. She's at the high school, I believe, talking to some parents. Janelle, I'm sure they have been very concerned all day.
Exactly, Lynn. Yeah, I have a mom right here. She's, you know, been sitting at home watching all of this play out, wanting to pick up her kids. We're at Crosby High School, and as you guys know, they just lifted the shelter in place. Lots of cars coming in and out trying to pick up their kids. Dana here, it's exactly what she's been doing for the past 30 minutes. Talk a little bit about your day.
Just woke up to my house shaking and the windows vibrating, the dog barking. The alarms went off on the cars, and then I thought it was thunder, no rain. So then I saw the smoke in the sky, so I looked at the news, and it was the chemical explosion. So from there, I just been anxious trying to figure out what's gonna come of what, if I can get my kids. So about an hour ago, we're all able to get our kids now. So that's what I'm doing. This is the last stop, high school.
You've had 3 stops, so
Yes.
you've gone, talk a little bit about which kids you've gotten already.
I've gotten 2 out of elementary school. 2 out of middle, 1 out of elementary, and then this is the last stop.
Have they told you what they've been doing all day?
Work, class work.
So nothing stopped for them?
No, well, they were outside earlier for a little bit, and then they went back in. So from there, they just been in school doing class.
And so you're concerned because now they're actually complaining of headaches.
Yes, ma'am. They're complaining of headaches and dizziness. And one of my other sons, he said his throat was bothering him, so I don't know if we have to seek medical attention for that.
Wow, and guys, Dana's been through a lot. She actually works in Galena Park, so she had her work interrupted from the ITC fire. Now it's her home. You live just a mile away.
A mile.
Yeah.
Literally a mile.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm a little bit better, but I'm just anxious and just a tiny bit dizzy. And my throat is a little irritated.
Ready to have your babies with you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. We'll let you go get your son or daughter?
Daughter.
Daughter.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Have you talked to her yet?
No.
Have they been nervous or scared? Have they said anything?
Not really. I have, but not them.
They're all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. So guys, yeah, so as you see, very busy out here now that parents can actually come pick up their kids. I think this is earlier than normal that they can just come get them, but lots of parents, as soon as they got the word, it was a mass phone call that went out to all the parents Dana said it was about 30 minutes ago that said that they can come get their kids. So here they are. We'll stay out here and monitor the situation and keep you guys updated.
All right, Janella, we know Dana, not the only parent making that trek. You know, she said she works in Galena Park. She had to make the trip back up, pick up some more kids. You know, at times like this, you just want to get the kids to let them know that it's okay. Mom and Dad are here, but the kids not too concerned. Hang in there with us as we try and get a picture back for you. Thanks so much, Janelle Bluto, reporting for us. And another live picture here of the Kimco facility in Crosby. Chopper, bear with us, live TV. This is what happens sometimes. And just to map it out for you, in case you're not familiar with that area, far northeast Harris County, as we zoom in there and fly in and get a good look at the facility itself. A decent sized facility where we're talking about it earlier. It's been around for quite a while, employs about 200 people. They have several tanks there on the facility that store different chemicals. They have 600 tanks, 28 reactors, 250 rail storage, spots as well too. You can see those lines running there. It looks like on the south side, maybe perhaps, or maybe that's the highway to the west of the facility, perhaps, is where some of the incoming and outgoing trains go. This is video from earlier today. You could see when that black plume of smoke was much thicker, such a menacing sight to everyone, and that's when the fire was raging. This started this morning at about 10:45.
Yeah, and we've got one fatality, one person dead, one worker, 2 other workers taken to the hospital by helicopter, both in critical condition. We heard the EPA say there's no actionable, they don't notice anything in the air, and they've been saying that all morning. That is good news. However, we just heard from a parent at Crosby High School saying that her children, who are at schools all over the district, are complaining of dizziness and their throats bothering them. So that's something we ought to keep an eye on. She said they're going to take their kids to the doctor. And
that's interesting that we're hearing from people about having different symptoms. Yet when we heard from the EPA earlier that they said there were no detectable amounts or trace amounts of anything in the air as of yet. And what we're all concerned about is the isobutylene. That is the chemical that was released and caught fire there at the Chemco plant and facility.
And health officials do say that isobutylene can cause upper respiratory types of irritants, can be an eye, nose, and throat irritant. Certainly from that mother's description of some headaches and dizziness, that is certainly emblematic of the symptomology according to what we're reading about this isobutylene. And then, of course, there is still a bit of an unknown factor, as we've been reporting, Mia and Len, is that the one tank of isobutylene, also an adjacent warehouse, caught fire.
With chemicals.
Correct. Some dry chemicals in there. Last word from the fire marshal's office was they did not know what those chemicals were, but they were combustible.
You know, and we're all having to become a quick study, fast study, chemical engineer. You know, everyone out there in the community now wanting to know what's the difference between isobutylene and benzene that we heard about the past few weeks. And we did learn from our expert earlier that while isobutylene can cause these health concerns, they have short-term effects versus the long-term effects that benzene does, and it being a carcinogen.
All right, we're going to step away from our ongoing coverage here. We'll be back right after this.
Heroes live forever.
When you marry a Marine, sometimes you think about losing him. It can be part of the deal.
We're lawyers. We have to find out what happened.
Heroes live forever.
We keep an eye on each other, don't we?
We will punish the Marines who did this to you.
Heroes live forever.
Bring the noise.
This Marine is ready.
The Code premieres CBS next Tuesday after NCIS.
Listen, reflux and heartburn drug users. If you suffered kidney disease or kidney failure after taking Prilosec, Nexium, or Zegrid, call 800-444-5000. You may be entitled to substantial compensation. These heartburn drugs have been linked to chronic kidney disease and kidney failure. If you or a loved one took Prilosec, Nexium, or Zegrid and suffered kidney problems, call board-certified lawyer and former judge Terry Bryant, 800-444-5000.
Hitch up your britches and tighten your trousers without the bulge. This buckleless belt gets rid of those uncomfortable, unfashionable belt buckles and still secures your slacks. But is it worth it? Find out Thursday morning on H-Town Rush.
Woody Harrelson, all new Ellen.
Okay, 2:39 on this Tuesday afternoon. If you're joining us live, we are entering our 4th hour of a chemical fire at the Chemco plant in Crosby. This is previously recorded video from Air 11 that you're seeing the fire at its worst. Things have since improved dramatically. We do know now they are focused more on not just getting the fire out, but keeping the tanks there at that facility cool, as well as to not cause any other additional